board meeting. Just welcome to everyone. I know that we have a quorum. I do want to just kind of remind everyone about public comment. There is a way to make public comment. If you're here in the room, please go and sign in on the public comment sheets if you plan to. We may or may not take public comment on everything that's on the sheet, but please sign in anyways. For those of you that are online, there is a way for you to access a form through the public notice website where you also can sign up to make public comment. We'll let you all know when that's time. Here you can see kind of the general instructions for making public comment. Just one thing to remember, all public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per person. If you do want more time, you will need to request it from the chair. And that may or may not be accepted. Already told you public comment is not guaranteed every meeting, but we do our best to accommodate it, especially for those items the board is likely to take action on. And when making a public comment, please make sure to start out by stating your full name and any affiliation you may have. And yeah, here are the instructions for making public comment over Zoom and how to do so. Please fill out the public, registration form that is online. So, okay. With that, I believe that kind of takes care of the welcome as well as the kind of public comment registration form. I didn't read the intro script. Do you think I need to go back and read it?
We do, just for the.
Okay. If you'll go back to that one, I will read it to the best of my ability. Okay, so this meeting is being held virtually and is hosted by the Utah Department of Health and Human Services, Center for Medical Cannabis based in Salt Lake City, Utah. Public notice of this meeting was provided as required under Utah's open meeting laws and was posted on the Utah Public Notice website. In compliance with Utah's open meetings laws, this meeting is being recorded. A recording of this meeting will be posted to the Utah Public Notice website no later than 3 business days following the date of this meeting. A rough draft copy of the unapproved minutes will be posted to the Public Notice website within 30 days of this meeting. Approved minutes will be posted to the Utah Public Notice website no later than 3 business days after board approval. All right, and with that, we can move on to item number 2 on our agenda, which is approval of the October 2023 minutes. Did everybody have a chance to review those minutes?
Yes.
Does anyone have any changes to the minutes? Okay, well, I'd be happy to
Take a
entertain.
motion to approve the October 2023 minutes.
I second that.
All right, we have a motion to approve the October 2023 minutes in a second. All in favor? Abby, will you please take a roll call vote?
Yes. JD Lewison,
Yes.
Matthew Page.
Yes.
Misty Smith.
Yes.
Jimmy Higgs.
Yes.
Nanette Barenzi
Yes.
and Annalise Keene.
Yes.
Couldn't hear her.
Can you hear me? I'm saying
Yeah.
yes.
Just want to make sure we can hear her when it comes time for her to be able to speak to. Okay, on to item number 3, administrative business. I'm not sure we have too much here, at least from my perspective. We will have our meeting in December. Do you know what date that is in December? Just so we can remind everyone. No, it's the 3rd Tuesday. Which day that is?
The 19th.
So it'll be on December 19th. And we will be meeting hopefully next Monday instead of Tuesday, if that will work for everyone to kind of have our strategy meeting. And then we'll put out an agenda. So I think that's all the more administrative business we have, unless anybody else has any administrative business of the board. Okay, on to item number 4, and I will turn this over to Cody James to present on the use of radiation on cannabis plants.
Thank you, JD. Cody James, I'm the Deputy Director of the Industrial Hemp and Medical Cannabis Division of the Department of Agriculture and Food. The team's done some research. As we all know, anybody who's in the cannabis industry or the patients, that not just in Utah, but a number of states within the United States and several countries around the world have regulations that specify that the cannabis meets, strict safety standards, regarding a number of things, but, in this instance, talking about microbial contamination. The topic of irradiation has come up and use, so the team has done some research on this, although it's probably limited, and there's a lot more, information that's out there. We kind of started first looking at FDA, as FDA has evaluated the safety of irradiated food for over 30 years. That's what we could find. The World Health Organization, as well as the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, as well as the USDA, has actually endorsed the use of irradiation on food, and such things such as beef and pork, crustaceans, fruits and vegetables, lettuce, eggs, spices and seasoning, just a number of things. It's been used on those types of foods to prevent foodborne illnesses, to destroy inactive organisms that could cause spoilage or decomposition, controlling insects, just a host of things that it could be used for. Usually it's being used with cobalt-60 or cesium-137 as a gamma radiation that X-rays could possibly use in some aspects. Electronic beams, so there's a host of things that could be used to irradiate foods, and in this case, cannabis. One thing to keep in mind as I go through this, I'm going to talk a little bit about a study, but one of the reasons that we want to bring this to the board is, as I'll get to in a minute, a little bit of concern with people who are very much on the lower health aspect there, but number one, if this is something that we want to really continue forward with, is identifying those products that have been treated with radiation. With that being said, I'd like to kind of move over to probably one of the better studies that we were able to find, which was the study is called Evaluating the Effects of Gamma Radiation for Decontamination of Medical Cannabis. This was done out of the Netherlands. Really, the conclusion to this study has several items. The irradiation treatment of cannabis has become really a standard practice in a couple of different states, or sorry, couple of different countries. The Netherlands and Canada are the ones where it's used the most. In this particular study that we looked at, microbial contamination did really help the cannabis come closer to meeting those pharmaceutical levels. And it did not change any of the content of THC or CBD or any of the cannabinoids overall. And so really kind of kept what we're considering to be the most important therapeutic components of medical cannabis. Really the biggest concerns, if you want to call it concerns, that we found is the irradiation had a measurable effect on the content of multiple cannabis terpenes. Mainly on the more volatile types of terpenes. Reduction looked to be between 10 and 20%, but could have been as high as 38% in some of those terpenes. One thing to note is that some cannabis users claimed during the study that the irradiation changes the taste and or smell of the cannabis during the smoking or vaporizing. It's obviously tough to tell how that actually worked or not, if that was the case. Probably the biggest thing as we're talking about weighing the risks versus the benefits of this type of thing. Obviously, the study and everything shows that the decontamination was successful in removing microbials and things like that. But there is a risk of infection that could be, according to the study, harmful or even fatal to seriously ill patients, which is again is why if it's something that the board wants to consider or advised to, is putting some type of notice on labels, which obviously we know would be a cost to the producers of doing something like that, but it is of note as the study shows that there is concerns that way. As I mentioned, it's used very common in Canada and Netherlands. That's where the study came from. Could be controversial based on the understanding. I can obviously send this report or this study to the board if you wish. But Probably as far as this goes for cannabis, this would probably have Utah be the pioneer in using irradiation and how we handle it for medical cannabis in the United States. But we also want to be very careful as to not to bring any more concerns to medical patients, medical cannabis patients that might fall into that serious category, at least by letting everybody know what, if it is going on, that it's, we'll stop.
Cody, did you say that we would be kind of pioneering on this?
Yeah, there's not a
I
whole
was
lot.
gonna ask you, what are other states doing in relation to irradiation?
Nothing really that we could find. I mean, everything that we found United States wide was food related. We couldn't really find anything on cannabis. Everything we could find on cannabis obviously was outside. That the best study again was Netherlands, but the Netherlands and Canada was the two countries that came up over and over again. Obviously, FDA and USDA feel that it's safe enough to use on a number of foods and different aspects, but they are marked on the labeling for all those foods with what they call the Ladura symbol, kind of a green circle looking thing. It's obviously out there. It is safe. It's not, like I said, changes to terpenes, and then that possibility of truly hurting someone that is definitely ill. Further. Just a thought, process. Like I said, I could send this report to what the team came up with was pretty much that in a nutshell. Not a whole lot of information, United States wise, world wise, that's what we kind of found.
Yeah, I think I definitely appreciate seeing a copy of all that stuff. And if you also have any of the research that you've cited that you can provide as well, it'd be nice to see the research papers on that. Can you give me an idea of how many, you don't have to tell me who, of course, but can you give me an idea of how many producers have talked to UDAF about, potentially doing this?
It's really just one,
Okay.
right? One of the things to kind of mention, as we go about this, I guess, is this, as we know, as we're producing cannabis, trying to get to the medical, having medical cannabis, and the way that it's produced does not necessarily lend itself to being truly pharmaceutical type of thing, right? And so there's always going to be some need for, lack of better terms, some remediation of that, whether before or after quality assurance testing, but to get there. So I think, so I guess part of it speaks to making sure maybe there's also a need to look at some ways of production to make sure that it cleans up. To answer your question, that there's only one that's pushing this hard, but not necessarily the labeling aspect, just the use of this as a production tool.
Wonderful, thanks. Yeah, I think it's always important to just quantify, the numbers. So appreciate that. Any other questions from anybody? Any further discussion? We don't have this slated for any kind of board action. We were just going to have it presented to us and we can put it on the agenda for, a future meeting, but it was just set for a presentation today. So if there's no further discussion, we can move on to the next agenda item.
Do you know, well, Rich isn't here, but Trevor, do you know, this is the Department of Health? Are they looking at providing a recommendation at all, or is it just gonna come from UDAF?
I don't want to speak for the department. Rich would be better to answer that, but as of now, my understanding is that we've been told about the conversations and looked at that study as well, but only in an informal manner, just as we're doing now.
Missy, do you know if this is something that the research center would be able to look at some point? Or the research review board, I mean, I know you guys take in research and review it. Would this be something that could be submitted to the? your
If
board
the
to
research is
look at
out
it?
there, but it sounds like it's a limited. Not enough.
Yeah, I mean, again, sorry, but the FDA and that it's like, but as you start talking about vapes more, right? I mean, obviously some people are smoking this, as we all know, but it's what does that look like? There's a lot of the stuff that's starting to go back to the cannabis plant and its ability to take in particles with the environment, things like that, which is a big part of a lot of the studies with that. It's being used in Japan and some of these facilities and even at Chernobyl and things like that to try and get some of that. So that's something that concerns, I guess, as far as what that actually holds. But again, based on that study from the Netherlands and then using FDA, look at any other plant type foods, like 30 years, so it says it's pretty safe for consuming it as far as eating it.
In that study, does it differentiate between like consuming the food versus, vaporizing or inhaling something?
It spoke mostly about vaping and smoking it, and it was that came really down to the taste and the smell of it. You could see the majority of it was basing on what effects it have on the cannabinoids, the terpenes. Does it still need, I mean, obviously the getting rid of the microbial contamination at work that way didn't hurt the cannabinoids whatsoever, drops in terpenes, but. And then there was that concern about those mentally ill patients that could cause some extra issues.
Okay, anything else from anybody?
Yeah, Cody, have you asked anybody
All right,
in?
thanks, Cody, appreciate it. We're gonna move on to
I'm
agenda
talking.
item number 5, which is titled.
Hey, I don't think you guys can hear us at all.
Proposal, that's definitely a mouthful.
Yeah.
I will
Annalise,
turn
can you
it
hear
over
me?
Annalise
to-
has something.
Oh, Annalise, go ahead.
I can hear you, but I don't think
You
they can.
can't hear us.
We can't hear her. She
Yeah.
needs to be unmuted.
We were, yeah,
It's our
we're
speaker.
talking, but you're not hearing it.
Is the sound, you're in the sound zone.
Okay, can you hear
Can
us?
you hear us now? Can you hear
Annalise, will
me?
you try speaking, see if we can hear you?
We,
We can't. It's
Ez is trying to speak.
There was a red
I'm
microphone by
talking.
her
Does
name.
anybody hear me?
Just barely when you hover over her, I promise.
If you did your speakers.
I can,
We can't hear any of them.
do you want me to sing? If I was singing, then you would get like,
Meeting now, originally. That's the speaker. I'll look at the.
well, Annalise, do you want to say anything to me? We can have
I
our.
would love to say to you that I don't want to vote on anything until I fully understand it.
Right? Well, and that's what I want to, my next question is gonna be that if they can ever hear it, but
Still, every meeting I'm in, there's always.
I haven't found anybody in industry who actually likes this
Always
yet.
asking me if they can hear me. But I guess in this situation, now it tells me why people ask that question, so. Yeah, she does still have a red.
That's what I'm saying. She's got a red microphone.
Yeah, she's half off, right?
Oh, it keeps toggling. Okay.
Yeah.
But I had a wall right there, really did, we said before.
But
Because that's.
yeah, I would like to be able to ask that because I have reached out to a couple of the processors and they're like, we wouldn't do this, but
You're good. We're
There's
ahead of
one
schedule.
app.
As I said,
I
yeah.
just don't think
We're
this is a
flying.
pioneer. I think we should pioneer.
Go on record and say that the department I did offer to.
As
use,
for what it's worth, I agree with you.
Your room is nice too.
Yeah.
You guys will be there next month.
Oh, yeah. That'd be nice. Looking forward to that one.
Oh, I can have as much as we are.
So while we're working on this, is there alternatives to radiation for the sterilization process?
Yeah, there's a handful of things that the different, producers are using. Mostly from what we're seeing is after there's usually a failure for microbial contaminants, things like that, kind of do that, so.
That's what it does.
Keeping it, in some aspects, the majority of the time what happens is we're talking about flour.
Yeah.
And then it's usually just being further processed into, concentrates. In this systemation, the one group that is using this mostly is, their production, I think, kind of tends to have that, so they're using, right after harvest, so even before it gets to the process. So it's trying to save that flour before it gets packaged and then sent for quality assurance testing.
30% of terpenes.
Yeah, no, that's the main thing I've heard about it, but I still think that.
Can you guys hear us yet? That'd be super cool.
So, but that's the one thing I've always heard.
No, I think we still have our own separate meeting.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, I think it's recorded and other people can hear us, so we can say anything we want. Cause that was my worry is like,
Hear us just fine, right, Annalise and Des?
yeah, we can hear you just fine.
Okay, you can hear us.
Good problem, because yeah, what I'm hearing on in text, some of the team, is that they can hear each other.
For those online, just please bear with us as we're dealing with these technical difficulties. That's not what I do.
Well, you're out of it, so it's. Oh.
Clicking all the things.
Period. I've talked to a couple of them and none of them seem to like it. Period. Worried about dead mold spores being inhaled. I'm just gonna text my questions in.
There we go.
Oh,
I just clicked all the buttons many times and then it just started working. I don't know what.
I'm so glad because I don't know what you guys would do without my just off-colored comments during the whole meeting. So now you can have them.
Okay, do I want to have a comment on the topic that Cody just presented? Now we can hear you.
Yeah, but now I can't hear you, JD. It's like barely, like you went from being able to, for me to hear you, now you sound like you're in water.
I'll change it back.
Testing. All right, Des, can you speak?
Yes,
All right.
that's better. Thank you.
Do either one of you have a comment in relation or some discussion about the presentation Cody just did on irradiation?
Yeah, I just had a couple, maybe a question, maybe a couple comments. I have talked to a couple people in industry, specifically processors. I haven't found anybody who likes the idea. They all seem to hold the same concerns that there isn't enough science to say that inhaling, because that would probably be one of the things that happens, right? Inhaling it, dead mold spores is going to be safe. And I know that there's other things that we can do to keep mold down during the growing process. I feel like maybe we should focus more on helping them in that area instead of then, radiating plants. But I'm happy to learn more. That's just my first thoughts is they're still inhaling or ingesting mold spores. So dead or not, we've now radiated and now we have dead mold spores. So I'm feeling a little weird about it, but happy to learn more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the only comment too was that I feel like I need to know more. I think I'd only want to approve something if there was really compelling evidence that it was going to be helpful and not create additional problems. And I'm just not meeting that threshold right now. So I'm still open to learning more about the articles that you suggested. I would like more information.
Yeah, agreed. And Cody will send that around to UDAF will send it around to all of us. And we can put it on the agenda for a future meeting. But I agree. I think there's a lot more to figure out here before we have any kind of recommendation, or probably even before you all have any kind of recommendation, I would imagine.
Yeah, so there's probably two steps to this, and I'll send it to Trevor and he can send it out to the board, but is first and foremost, because there is nothing in statute or rule that is allowing this or prohibiting it. So that might be the first thing to take a look at. And if it, again, second, 1A, I guess, or 1B would be, if we do allow it, what do you want to do knowledge wise for patients, things like that. But I'll send that out and then happy to revisit it in the future.
Sounds good. Thanks, Cody. Welcome, Rich.
Thank you. Good to be here.
All right, we are going to move on to item number 5 now. The medical cannabis pharmacy online market inventory proposal. Like I said, definitely a mouthful. I'm going to turn it over to Trevor to give a little bit of a presentation, but this is meant more to be a discussion today than necessarily to take any formal action because there's quite a bit there. But yeah, happy to turn it over to Trevor and let him kind of explain where everything's coming from.
All right, thank you, Chair. So to set the groundwork, we don't have a memo or slides for a presentation, but as you said, just a brief discussion. This was talked about at our last meeting, and the concept is that the state would manage an inventory, which would pull all of the in-stock products from every pharmacy and collect it in one central location that's patient patient facing. So along with our next two items on the agenda, I spoke to all 14 processor companies about this, as well as 12 of the 15 pharmacies. And there were some pros and cons. So I'll just give a brief description of those and then turn it over to the board. Some of the pros were that this would be an unprecedented amount of information for patients at their fingertips to understand everything in stock in Utah in the legal medical cannabis market, as opposed to visiting different websites and wondering if those websites are completely up to date. The state would have a live or a near live system that's pulling from our inventory control system and displaying that information for patients. The negatives were pretty resounding, that managing this system in real time or near real time would be a massive logistical hurdle, given that medical cannabis is not central fill. We have 15 different pharmacies with 15 different inventories, and being able to collate that into something that is accurate and wouldn't accidentally mislead a patient seeing something that's in stock on there, and then they go to the pharmacy and it's not there. Many licensees worry that that system would just be unmanageable and might not make a lot of sense if a patient already knows their local pharmacy or knows the pharmacy they get delivery from and can just go to the website and see the inventory there and call if they have questions. But with that, I'll turn it over to the board.
Thanks, Trevor. Appreciate it. I think from, just from, industry perspective, right, and speaking just on behalf of, pharmacies, I think one concern that we would have is, we field, quite a bit of customer service, related calls, even the calls for, other pharmacies, right? Because we do have a live, team that you can call into or chat into. My concern would be if there is some sort of, glitch in terms of the syncing, you know what I mean? I mean, we know MJ Freeway, just come to one of our pharmacies and we can tell you how bad the syncing issues can be. I'm not saying you all will build a website like MJ Freeway. I think everyone's learned from that, and what I've been seeing, in terms of the seed to sale stuff has looked good so far. I just would have concerns about if the inventory's off, right? And they look at the state's website, they come to our pharmacy, and it just so happens, hey, that's not in stock. Number one, dealing with the patient at the counter, but number two, dealing with the patients over the phone. And I just feel like this might be better handled by, between processors and pharmacies, allowing processors to engage in advertising or targeted marketing, where they can let people know where their products are available. They could let people know where, hey, we just dropped off these many units to Wholesome Co. or to Beehive or somewhere. Keeping that, I think, in the hands of industry, I think is a better plan. And I say that, one, because I think we're capable of it, but number two, with the state implementing the new licensing software that I know hasn't gone totally smoothly because we experienced some of it. And also the big lift that you all are taking in terms of the seed to sell software that's going to launch sometime next year. I would think it would make better sense to trust it to the operators initially. And then if it proves, hey, operators can't do it, Matt's website's never updated, and I'm getting the same kind of consternation from patients of, hey, they said it was available and now you're saying it's not, or whatever. Then I think we could go the route of, trying to make it more of something that, you all deal with as a public, entity. I think we can trust, the processors who are going to have an incentive to make sure that website is always updated and as accurate as possible. And I think it's better to trust that to them, given that they don't have, yes, it'll be a lift for them, right? They will have to develop their own websites and things like that. But we're already thinking of doing that anyways in relation to our next, agenda item. And I just don't see a reason to put another thing on the state's plate that will just serve potentially as another point of kind of, finger pointing between industry and regulators of your website wasn't updated. Oh, well, your website wasn't updated and how it all works. So even though we give unprecedented access to that information, I think there's another way that information can get out there such that patients know where they can go and find their medicine. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think that, if we're talking about processor product from an independent processor, I think that the best way to have that is to have the processor say where they have taken that medication and a pharmacy to have it on their website. And I don't really see a lot of need for any other involvement. So that's, that's kind of just where I stand, is let the processors just say where they've taken their medication, and the patients will be able to go there or, have it home delivered.
Anyone else?
I mean, as a patient, shopping online, they can sometimes not even have the information correct when I'm ordering for delivery. And when I get it and it's in hand and it's the wrong terpenes or whatnot, it's the wrong product. So if you have to go multiple agencies of who's going to be accountable, if that's wrong, it still doesn't solve my time that I had to buy it, that I had to go return it, that I had to get the right product. That really comes into play, and that would affect me greatly.
Wouldn't
Well, I
it be handy if like we let patients like request where they, like where to send their product? That would be cool.
That's the next discussion point. You're getting ahead.
I
of it.
know. That's why I didn't say it. I was just
I know it's
hinting.
your baby. I know it's your baby, but we'll get to it on the next agenda item. So, excuse me, Minna, are you saying that you think by adding another layer that it just creates
Oh.
more potential for mistakes?
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, just who do you hold accountable for that? The only person that's gonna pay would be the patient with time. I also heard some concern about having access to all the product information. I mean, there's literally just an over 18 wall to look at a dispensary in any legal use state. So you can access any information. It is all there. And if you click a little button, you can see it. So I don't really think that having access to all the product information should be really a concern for anybody. I think knowledge is power to a patient. So if you can see everything that's available, I think that would help greatly to a lot of people to be able to see it.
Yeah, I mean, I think looking at it as of access for patients, right? More information is power, the way you just stated, right? I think ultimately it's the way MJ Freeway is set up today, it's on a 2-hour delay for most reporting. So every 2 hours, it pulls a snapshot of all the current inventory. And so, yes, anything that would be, if I pulled a report today at all, I mean, on a state level, they can currently pull inventory of every single pharmacy, what's available, what's active for sale, what they can see at any given time. Logistically, it's not going to be super difficult, other than there's a delay, and that's going to be a hurdle for patients because it may be off. They may have only had one item left in that 2-hour window it's sold. I think as far as access, I've kind of been big on every patient has to sign up through EVS. They all get a login, it's separate, it's clear. You talk about a portal that I can just go click yes, I'm older than 21 and get access. I mean, if you're wanting to limit what it's seeing, there's a already built-in somewhat solution. They're revamping the entire system now. We're getting a new system that's going to have more robust reporting. That potentially, from the discussions I've had, it's a live reporting, not a delayed reporting. So as things are sold, that number gets deducted. It's there. I mean, it's just as easy saying this. There's a disclaimer that these might not be accurate. I think what processors are looking for, it's not necessarily we want. I mean, someone had brought up emailing people saying, "Hey, my product's now available at Wholesome." It's not just that. I think this program can be better to serve patients in that if there's a certain product that they love, and it's a certain brand, they should be able to run those, get that table, filter it, and say, I want to see this X brand. Here's all the products. Here's where it's found. I mean, we don't necessarily need pricing on there. I'm sure that'll be contentious, but I'll say it anyways. But pricing is different at every single pharmacy, so it might be good for a patient to see what are competitors throwing it at, because they can see on the retail price, there is some variance in there, and choose what's going to best fit them. But I think that's just a way to make this program more transparent. And really who we're trying to help here are patients who are in rural areas that don't have access, that maybe are planning a day trip to a certain area where they can come into their pharmacy and they can actually plan it. I mean, trying to order online, trying to do all this thing, some people, they don't want to do that. They want to go in, experience the pharmacy, meet with their pharmacist, place an order, and know that they're getting products that they could expect to get. And so if there's something built in on that aspect of it, There may be some cost, but it's not hard putting a disclaimer saying that these numbers may not be accurate. Because even the pharmacy ones aren't accurate. So, and there's no disclaimer. So, yes, Rich.
Just one thought I was thinking through is the possibility of, we have a phase one with our new system. And there's some additional features that could be offered in a phase two. If there were legislation that mandated it, and this could be a part of it, if we have confidence in what's happening in phase one with the most critical functions, the core functions, we need to make sure those are solid and the API connections are working appropriately, right? And then our level of confidence increases, and then we start to offer additional functions, which this potentially could be one, as long as we have confidence in it. I don't think we want to waste state resources on presenting something that we have to like have a bold disclaimer about. We would rather have something that we can be really confident in and not still have a disclaimer, but that would just be a wise use of state resources and that's valuable to patients. That could potentially be something like an inventory, where one-stop shop for seeing what's available and prices and things like that, but it might be something better for a phase two.
Well, I think we're kind of just caught in between phases, right? You guys are implementing a new software system, right? You're getting it designed. You know, the licensing software, I said it before you came in, Brandon, it hasn't been exactly the greatest experience so far. And that's just for licensing, right? So I know you all are working diligently and we're gonna have a better product, I'm convinced of it, than we have currently with MJ Freeway. But maybe this is one of those things that we say, hey, until you all have, you know, these features built out or figured out on your end, or we determine that it's good to invest in, maybe we allow the producers and the industry to do this now on their own. And then, like I said, if that proves unworkable, if that proves to have too many problems for Matt's liking or other people's liking, other members of the board, then we can come back and say, hey, we recommend that maybe this be moved over, you know, from the private sector to the public sector, because I feel like what will happen is if we do it, we're going to be many months down the road into 2024 before this information could be made available. Now, you all may be able to present more information than processors could, you know, or industry could, but I feel like this is something we could do now, right? You know what I mean? You know, obviously we'll have to go through the legislative session and stuff, so it will be into sometime into 2024, but I bet you by that May 3rd date, when usually everything kind of goes, you know, all the bills become effective, I would imagine we could have hopefully rules pretty close around that same time and allow the producers to put this information out there. And then, hey, if that proves unworkable and we're just like, hey, this is a mess and the state needs to step in, then okay. That's how I would see it. Let you guys get your feet underneath you again from a software platform and kind of technology perspective, because the lift you guys are taking right now, I'll just say it from my perspective, the replacement of MJ Freeway is vitally important, right, to get right. And I know you all are working really hard to do that. I would hate for this to create any sort of kink in that. And if we can let industry and the private side try it first, then maybe we can push it over to you all once you feel like, you know, to your words, that it would be worthwhile, that it wouldn't just be something that falls flat and then you all have to face backlash, or then there's this push and pull between industry and regulators of, well, whose numbers are right, whose numbers are wrong. I just would hate to create any more, you know, consternation than necessary.
Yeah, keep in mind that no other state does this entire state inventory.
Yep.
They don't do it. So it would be a new system, or a new idea, which is it has some worth. It's a good idea on its face, but it's just the logistics could be very complex. And that's partly why no other state has tried to do it.
Yeah.
So.
And one thing to think about is like a processor, I mean, we're not saying that the state can't try to do it, but if we were to ask processors to do it, they could probably have it done by the end of the week, right? Have their website up and available and no cost to patients. What would be the cost, Rich, of having a state-run site like this, and how would that come out of like the $3 fee? I mean, that would be something that you're constantly updating. So what do you suspect that you would have to raise fees to patients in order to cover that, because this is revenue neutral.
It's definitely a bigger expense and, Department of Agriculture could consider, what that might look like with the new Salesforce system. But I would highly recommend that be something that be focused on later, not now.
Well, it's not a vote today.
Right.
Just-
Yeah, let's put it on, items that.
I was gonna vote today. I wanted to vote today, so.
You're welcome to.
You have to be in
make a
person.
motion if you like.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, we did just have it set for discussion. If anybody has anything more on this topic before we move on, now's the time. Otherwise, we'll move on to the processor advertising and targeted marketing, which we do have slated for board action. And we will probably put this on a future agenda, I think, as you can all tell. And Rich, I think, and Brandon, this one good thing is as you guys are kind of developing and doing these sprints and the different things you guys are doing with the software, providing us with updates of when you think this could become a part of the process, like when you might be ready for this discussion again, would be helpful from your perspective.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, folks. Okay, we will turn it to item number 6, just about on time on the agenda too. And I will turn it over to Trevor to do a presentation on processor advertising and targeted marketing.
All right, hold on up, please. There it is. Okay. So we'll have a brief presentation on this, should be no more than 10 minutes, hopefully. Set the groundwork of where we're at today. Can we go next slide, please? Okay, so here's a quick framework for our presentation. We'll talk about the differences between advertising and targeted marketing in the medical cannabis space, laws in other states applying to the two, then arguments for and against the potential of processors being able to advertise and target market, as well as medical claims and potential benefits, which came up as the largest concern from processors, and then finally some potential recommendation options. Okay, so what is advertising? Advertising is a definition that only applies to pharmacies. The statute reads that cannabis production establishments, which is cultivators and processors, cannot advertise in any medium to the general public. However, pharmacies can. They are limited in what they can advertise. So for example, on a billboard, you could see a pharmacy's name, logo, hours of operation and address. That's something you maybe have seen on I-15. There's a few other things they can advertise to the general public, such as certain educational material, a service available at the pharmacy, if they do home delivery or not. But pharmacies are not allowed to advertise any product, brand, or device in the market. Can we go next slide? So targeted marketing is a definition in Department of Health and Human Services statute, which allows pharmacies to engage in electronic communication with individuals who request to receive it, otherwise opt in. So you may go to the pharmacy's website and put in your phone number, your email to consent to targeted marketing. So targeted marketing would be also in person when you go into a pharmacy and you see advertising for certain items. That would be considered targeted marketing as well. As I said before, production establishments, they can't target market as well. They have essentially no way to communicate either voluntarily through opt-in or to the general public in any medium. So some laws in other states to keep in mind. Of the medical cannabis only states, because obviously, as you can guess, in adult use states, cannabis is a consumer commodity. So those state laws tend to be a little more lax with regards to advertising and targeted marketing. But of the medical cannabis only states, 10 allow some form of either. But at least 4, including Utah, do not allow for either in any manner. So a few things that I found maybe of interest to the board is At least 4 or 14 medical-only states require that any material, advertising, targeted marketing, or otherwise must be pre-approved by the state regulator. Some states prohibited health-related claims or any kind of medical advice, while others allow descriptions with various limitations, such as saying this may treat, cure, prevent, diagnose, etc. And on that note too, at least 3 states specifically mentioned federal statute on prescription drug advertising and require that any material in the cannabis space must be in line with that federal regulation. And then lastly, at least 4 states require that any digital targeted marketing, like putting in your email or your phone number, must have an easy, accessible opt-out feature. Next slide, please. So some arguments against advertising and targeted marketing. And as I referenced in the previous item, but I'll say it again, I had a conversation with every single processor company, both the heads of those companies as well as some staff who wrote me personally on the matter. And I spoke with 12 of the 15 pharmacies on these issues. Some of the key points for arguments against advertising and targeted marketing. Some felt that it may facilitate industry access to patients rather than patient access to medicine. And kind of a sub point to that is that it may make the program appear more recreational, as any amount of advertising is getting cannabis more out there. And some folks felt a little uncomfortable with what other processors might do with regards to advertising their products in certain demographics or groups of people they may be trying to reach. Advertising and targeted marketing may minimize the role of a pharmacist. If a patient is more swayed by an email they get from a processor rather than talking to a pharmacist or even their qualified medical provider or limited medical provider, they may be more susceptible to wanting to listen to advertising than medical professionals in the program. Processors may make inaccurate or unverifiable claims about their products that mislead patients and overpromise desirable outcomes. And we have a slide kind of more on that towards the end, that many processors, some even for advertising and targeted marketing, were concerned that processors may say something like, I have the only product in the state that can help this condition, or they may actually engage in slander about other processors and say, my products are the purest or the best for this condition. And finally, processors may heavily market their best-selling products and make patients more deal-seeking than medicine-seeking, particularly if any advertising or marketing material includes mention of price discounts, whether the processors agreed to a discount with a pharmacy and they both advertise that, or whether the processor wants to advertise their own suggested price. There's major concern that patients, similar to one of the previous points, would no longer be seeking medicine, but rather seeking to make their wallet not quite as light. Let's do next slide, please. Arguments for advertising and targeted marketing. So the majority of processors did believe that some form of advertising should be allowed, and the near majority believed targeted marketing should be allowed, period. So allowing processors to do targeted marketing may make it easier for patients to discover where a product is. This was mentioned a couple items ago by Nanette, but if a patient can actually get an email saying, we just had a shipment go to Wholesome Co, and here's what's in the shipment, right? We have this many vapes that went out with this strain, right? That would be of massive benefit to some patients, many processors thought. Pharmacies are allowed to market specific products to patients for the sake of fairness and competition. Why not allow processors to do the same, to level the market and to ensure that licensees all have an opportunity to let patients know about their products? Processors can't rely on pharmacists to adequately explain their product's intended use. This specifically applies to some of the more niche products that a processor may intend for a specific kind of patient or a specific condition, or even if it's just a general effect that they intend for the product. Many processors felt that they can't rely on a pharmacist, especially outside of their vertical chain, to explain what's the intention behind that product. And then finally, allowing processors to advertise or engage in targeted marketing would align Utah more with other states. As I mentioned earlier, 10 of the 14 medical-only states in the country allow for some form of targeted marketing and advertising. So as I alluded to earlier, the biggest concern of processors was what kind of medical claims and potential benefits could be allowed in any sort of marketing or advertising material. And what I have here up on the screen is existing rules that apply to targeted marketing for pharmacies. So R 383-7-18 says that targeted marketing may not include unsubstantiated health claims and other claims that are not supported by substantial evidence or substantial clinical data. The second rule down below defines what substantial evidence and substantial clinical data means, which is there must be at least 2 studies of a clinical nature that support whatever the claim is. And A through D there are talking about must be from a review board conducted by the federal government, cited by DHHS or UDAP potentially, and must be of reasonable scientific rigor. So the board could, if it likes, either talk about however it would like to potentially regulate claims and benefits, or recommend that processors merely follow existing rules on what's allowed with those claims. So finally, here are some recommendation options. On the left side, will be sort of your main vote, and on the right, those are some of the more finer points, right? So the board could vote to allow both. But the board could allow for only targeted marketing, but not advertising to the general public. Or 3, the board can keep it the way it is and continue to prohibit it. And then on the right, you'll see if yes to either targeted marketing and advertising or just targeted marketing, the board should consider what sort of things a processor might be allowed to put in that targeted marketing, such as shipments, specific products in the shipments, prices and discounts, medical claims and benefits like we just talked about. And if they're going to make those claims, should they cite literature, or should they comply with that rule? What should be there? And then finally, the memo touches on this in more detail, but to engage in targeted marketing with a processor, should the patient have to verify their card with that processor? Currently, pharmacies do not have to verify a patient's card online in order for them to engage in targeted marketing. It's just an age gate of 18 or older. So the board could recommend keep it as it is, consistent with pharmacies, and apply the same rules equally, or that in order to get onto that processor's website and engage in that targeted marketing, the card would be verified through the electronic verification system. But I'll turn it back to the board and happy to answer any questions or expand on anything in the memo if you have questions on those.
Wonderful. Thanks, Trevor. Appreciate the presentation. As I look at pages kind of 7 and 8, or really 7 through 9, it kind of talks about the considerations, and it seems like there's kind of four things that we need to consider, right? Should we allow processors to engage in advertising? Now, this is not targeted marketing, advertising. And if so, what does that look like? Whether we want them to engage in advertising or not, we also need to answer the targeted marketing question. Then if we do want to allow either one of those, what should they be allowed to say in advertising or in targeted marketing? And then we have to deal with the claims. I'll speak to the claims because I do have some experience with that from being in private practice, having defended multiple cases against the Federal Trade Commission. There's already federal law, both from the FDA and the FTC on medical claims. Rich or Brandon, I don't know this, and I don't know if either one of you, do you know if Utah has specific laws around, medical claims and whatnot, other than what's, in the medical cannabis laws? I just don't know if you guys would know either.
No.
Okay. So I know there's already, I say this all to say, there's already law out there and there's already precedent, and there's already a bunch of stuff in the rules and statutes about what educational materials can contain, what things you can say and not say, whether in educational materials, marketing, what we can say and can't say in advertising. It seems like the thing is there a way to formulate that to encapsulate processors? Because of course, processors might have different things they want to speak about in advertisements, right? They don't, maybe it's not a they can't say a service that's available, right? It's not a one-to-one, right? So there would need to be some new language. But as far as the medical claims go, I think that's already well controlled by both the medical cannabis laws as well as federal law. And I think a processor would be taking a pretty significant risk to make, a medical claim that runs afoul of federal law. I do know that the FDA and I believe the FTC have sent numerous kind of, love letters to CBD producers and other folks, cannabis companies who have made, claims, like that. So I feel like that would be really well controlled. And we kind of already have a framework of, whether the educational materials or in marketing materials, what you can kind of say and not say around, medical claims. And I can speak, personally for our business, we vet anything that we're saying from that perspective of you cannot be making a claim. So it's usually either two things, anecdotal or, patient experience or your own anecdotal experience, right? That's usually what it is some people report this, right? Or that it may aid with a general type of thing, right? As opposed to a specific medical claim, right? You know what I mean? So we're always, we're already doing that in terms of our comms, through the pharmacy. And I feel like processors could be held to that same standard. So I think that answers maybe one of the four questions, or at least from my perspective, answers one of those, four questions. So I figured I'd at least, say that piece, but happy to hear. I mean, we can go right down the list if we want to talk about the advertising first and then targeted marketing, but I'll open it up to you all.
One quick comment and a question. So for pharmacies, the advertising that's allowed is so limited. What would processors want for advertising? What are some of the things that they would want to include, and what do we think would be fair, given that pharmacies have such limitations on what they're allowed to advertise?
I'm happy to answer that, Annalise. So processors were more divided on advertising. The slight majority felt that billboards would be acceptable. That's what pharmacies can do now. Print media may be acceptable. But anything that communicates to a very broad audience, for instance, radio, television, having someone on a street corner with handbills, that wouldn't be acceptable because it would undermine the legitimacy of the program and make it look recreational. But billboards were by far the most popular idea. Another thing you may want to consider is internet advertising, specifically pop-up ads. Many states prohibit any medical cannabis business from having those unsolicited pop-up ads. But anyways, yeah, that's what I heard from processors, but happy to turn that over to anyone else.
I'm just curious what they would want to communicate in the advertising, less the form and more like what they would want to share at the advertising level.
Sure.
Annalise, I can speak to this as a processor. I mean, I think currently the way this is written, I can just talk through the couple points here is we're offering to allow processors to target market. Well, how do they get that targeting? So that through advertising. So we have to advertise a website that a patient or an individual within Utah can go through to two things: learn about the industry and learn about the products that brand is offering. And at which point they can either sign up for more details or essentially, I mean, we've already talked about the website we'll have is have it be a front to send someone to to a pharmacy nearest their home. So we'll probably hit their websites. So drive traffic to the pharmacy for those that carry the products. The biggest thing is that getting that list of emails of patients, because processors who don't have a retail location have no access to any patient data. So if we want to target market, right now my list includes me. I'd be emailing myself saying, here you go, because that's all I have at this point, that's to be subscribed to it. So you have to build that. So the only way is through advertising. So in talking with other processors, billboards are a good way to get it out there. There's plenty that are up and down the Wasatch Front. I see them I drive an hour and a half every single day, all from the South Valley all the way up to northern Utah, and I see plenty of billboards for cannabis in Utah. Not just pharmacies, but there's also QMPs that are listing their services available. So having that access, it should mirror what a pharmacy does today. We're not, no one's asking for special treatment. We don't want additional like abilities. We're not, I mean, we should not be doing any claims or saying, putting any type of products out there, have it be appealing to kids or anything. It's the exact same standard that pharmacies are held to today. And that goes on the flip side for the targeted marketing. Is if we do get a distribution list that I can send out and I can say, hey, patients, here's an update from Riverside Farm. Here's products that are available that we just delivered today at these locations. These are available. And I know we're going to get into whether or not pricing should be an option. But we can, that's a lot of information, so we'll digest that.
One thing, though, the access, I'll let you go, Annalise, I just want to say, one thing about, you know, the access that pharmacies have to emails and those types of things is just to their current patients. So if you're going to request access to all of the emails, that might need to be a discussion as well, because then that would be additional access that processors would have that pharmacies might not have to engage in those same behaviors. So I think it's just keep that, you know, in mind. And I know both Trevor and Rich wanted to say something as well, but
Real quick to follow up, do pharmacies have access to, anyone can sign up to your email blast?
yes,
Regardless if
but-
they're a patient of yours or not.
well, yeah, everyone- you can get a profile right on the website.
So that, I think that's what maybe I said it wrong. I'm not saying I'm gonna go tell Rich and say, hey, I'd like the email of every single patient in Utah.
You're just saying like they.
We don't have, I don't have access to anything, so I have to build that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so over time, it's gonna get there. I mean, that's all I'm saying.
I got you. Yeah.
If I can just clarify real quick, unless Annalise has something to add. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify some comments that, I think she was saying she was good. That a website would not be considered advertising per se, right? Because the advertising law for pharmacy says they can't do brands, products, and devices. But when you go on a pharmacy's website, that's all you see right there on the front page, right? So that actually falls under targeted marketing.
Yep.
So if I'm going on Riverside's website, that's not advertising. The billboards, like you mentioned, that is advertising. Just want to clarify that.
Yeah. General public versus behind an AJ.
You're consenting to go on the website.
Yeah. And I agree with Matt's point. I mean, you know what, the awareness around it is going to be difficult to generate without the ability to provide some form of advertising. And now, like I said, there may need to be some tweaks of what can be said in that advertising, but if really a lot of it is just the stated purpose is to create awareness around these processors so people can then go and find their websites. You all can already maintain a website, right? The question is, what can you maintain on that website? Right? That's going to be one of the questions. Right now, you can have very, very little, right?
Well, we can't have,
Basically, employment opportunities is about what you can have.
that's all we
right?
can have,
And
yeah.
Green Cross.
Yeah, we
Something
can't,
to that effect.
correct, because that falls under the targeted marketing, which we cannot do.
And so basically what you're saying is you would like to see the advertising and the targeted marketing for processors be on par with pharmacies.
Correct.
Okay. Rich, yes, sir.
Just a quick comment about this is the standard in the current statute is advertising in any medium. So that is no limit. I'm thinking like T-shirts, radio, yard signs, billboards, anywhere, magazines, everywhere, right? And a processor could be as aggressive as they would like to. They could throw out as much money as they would want to and drive people to their website. So, and literally what I imagine you'd see is billboards that advertise a Boujon logo, or you see the logo of Standard Wellness, and then they have a website. So they're driving people to their website, right? Now, I think what is really important to also keep in mind is that there would be a provision that it not be recreational in nature, right? So that's restrictive. It's restrictive to a pharmacy and it would be restricted to a processor. So there could be, I think about kids looking at billboards, seeing a particular brand. I don't know, you name your brand and that will cause them to wonder, what is that? Well, if I go to this website, I'll be able to tell. And then when I go to the website, it asks me if I'm over a certain age. As a 15-year-old, I can still go to that website. Even if I don't have a card, you know, I'm underage, but I could go there and I could find out about all this advertising, about the deals, but I can't go buy. I'd have to do that through my parent, but I could still get access through a website to the targeted marketing. And so that's, I think, a scenario that would happen in the reality of this, if this law were to go through.
Probably already happening.
You can do that in any state though.
Sure, right.
That was the argument.
But I'm just saying, and actually, Wholesale Co, Dragonfly, the flower shop, they do that now. Right? So, and they are processors as well, but they're vertically integrated. So, that is, there would just be more of it. And, it's just a reality of what would happen. Like literally, what else besides a logo would you see from a processor? They have language with their logo. So if that language has a recreational disposition, it's prohibited.
Yeah, couldn't make medical claims, right? That are
Right.
substantiated, like all that same layer of regulation would fit over the top of it.
Yeah.
We can bring up again the statute for advertising for pharmacies just to show on the screen. Yeah, go, what is advertising number 3 right there? So that's what's allowed for pharmacies. And you'll notice it says, well, actually it says in the memo, I don't think it says right there, in any medium for pharmacies, they may do this. But there's a reason why you don't see pharmacy yard signs, right? Because why would you do that? So some processors said, hey, I don't even think that I'll do billboards because why would I pay $6,000 a month to advertise to 95% of people driving on the freeway that aren't patients? So, and take that as you may, processors may, as Rich said, you know, go for it, aggressively market. But it seemed like a majority said, you know what, I'm not gonna really chase the public on this because it wouldn't be cost effective. Anyways, so.
And you've seen, I mean, we've seen various different campaigns in terms of advertising, right? Some companies, you know, pharmacies have done more, some have done less, right? I've yet to see a pharmacy yard sign. I can say that. I don't know if someone else has. But I think people will be smart, right? And they'll determine where to allocate their resources. But if you look at that list of what they can do, I imagine we could make a few small changes, keep some of these things, right? The name, the logo. I don't know if you'd want to do location, hours of operation, but maybe a service available. Maybe if you engage in some type of extraction method that you believe the public needs to know about from a general perspective that doesn't advertise a particular product, those types of things. I think it's more so, and Matt probably can speak to this even better. It's that awareness around the fact that you're out there, you're in the marketplace, you know, you're a part of the industry and you're trying to drive patients to come find out more. Then when they get to your website is where they learn in depth from a targeted marketing perspective about what you have available, additional education and stuff. And then on the back end, where can I now go find this as a patient? Where is it available? I think that's a lot of what the independent processor wants, at least from the couple that I've spoken with, is just people don't know I exist, you know, or even if they do, they don't know where they can find my products unless I have that kind of one-to-one, you know, interaction. I haven't heard of any processor that's asking for anything, and Matt even said it here today, that's outside the bounds of kind of the framework we've already developed. There may need to be some small tweaks to make it make sense for a processor, but it sounds like it's going to maintain the status quo in terms of what they can say. It's just going to open it up a little bit to say who can say, you know, those things on par with pharmacies, right? You know what I mean? And I just think it allows you to bring good awareness around your brand, especially if you're an independent brand and you're feeling, you know, you're feeling the headwinds, you know, so that's kind of how I see it. Yeah, go ahead, Rich.
Just another thought is there are some brands that are verbatim the exact same of the pharmacy as the pharmacy name or the processor name, right? So how do we handle that? That's just a reality. That's just one thing to keep in mind. Also, I don't anticipate that there would ever be a policy that processors would be able to get direct access to names or addresses of medical cannabis cardholders ever. They would start from zero and drive people to their website. People select option to join their subscription, right? So that they would just get those one by one with permission individually from each of the people they send to. And then we get complaints from people that will say, well, how did my name get on this, right? And there's like a million ways that someone's name could get on an email list. Like your buddy, you know, so-and-so has your email and, I don't know, Riverside says, hey, we're building this email list. Hey, Joe, can you give me a list of your friends' emails? This is not coming from the EVS. This is coming from Joe's email list of his personal friends. Because you're trying to build a base,
Or-
right?
Yeah.
Well, in
And
terms,
I don't mean to pick on
No, it's fine.
Riverside, but I mean, that's how you build a list.
Yeah, well, like what about a tent at the
But,
cannabis
but the
convention?
problem with that is that there's consent.
No,
So-
it,
Me giving you my friend's email address is not consent of my friend, right? So that's the way it's built.
I mean, there's federal marketing and advertising rules on who you can email blast. If you get access to an email list, they're out there, you can pay for them. You can get tens of thousands of emails tomorrow. Most of them require an opt-out clause at the end. I saw that point in here. I mean, I think I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, I get emails from most of the pharmacies here just so I can see what they're pushing. And there's an opt-out on almost every single one of them. So they're currently providing that option to opt out of their own the emails they're sending.
Right, but
So-
even it would be, under a scenario, it would be illegal to put a name on the list without you getting consent.
Yeah,
Well, maybe the way.
consent is different, right? I mean, we don't need to speak to that because that's not gonna solve it. I think personally, like as a processor in our company, all we're looking at getting is we want a way to drive traffic to our website, allow people to sign up,
Yep,
and then they'll understand. You may get a newsletter once a month, and you may get occasional email saying, here's where a delivery's been. That's probably gonna be it. It's not really gonna be anything other than that, because that's really, that's our only way to drive awareness to the products that we have
right.
throughout the state.
Yeah,
So-
but I think there's two different standards, one is that you can never send anything to anyone that has not given you consent.
Oh, no, yeah, I agree, they have
Or
to sign up on the
Can you
website.
just go and buy lists? You just can't get it from the EVS. And be
Wow.
aggressive in sending to thousands of email addresses that have never given you consent, but who have the ability to easily opt out. Right?
Yeah.
And there's a policy decision between those. Because when ag gets complaints about a processor sending them a bunch of junk.
I'm sure I'll have Cody calling me the next day, and then I'll have an inspector up there at my
There's a
facility the day
difference
after
between
that,
those two.
saying, how'd you get this list?
Just having opt out, I mean, makes it a lot easier for a processor to build a list of.
No,
thousands.
I understand. It's the
Right.
same. Here's the thing, is even I'm sure Wholesome, as they send out emails, they get same complaints. Or a response to it says, please don't ever email me again. Why'd you get my email? People sign up and they forget, or
Sure,
to your point, it's not gonna be, I think if we're over regulating what we're gonna be, how it's managed, then you're just gonna hurt the intent of what we're looking for. We want people to sign up and send it. If one person complains saying, I never agreed to this, well, who's correct? Right? I mean, that's how we got that email. I mean, to what we're looking for. I think you could probably put in there, you shouldn't be purchasing email lists to mass advertise to people. Or, I mean, at that point, it's market, because that's what you're doing.
right.
But, I mean, that's fine to put in if we want to put that in this recommendation.
well, so the targeted marketing statute already says for an individual who has requested to receive promotional information.
Yeah, so it's already protecting them.
Right,
Yeah.
so I guess I'm a little
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, when
lost as to
people,
what
I
the
mean, if
issue
people sign
is.
up for a profile, you know, if you guys have a website, and you
Yeah.
allow them to sign up for a profile, I guarantee you will have a box they check
Oh, we
with
will.
consent, you know, to receive this kind of information. It's, if you go to our website and you're not a user that's logged in before, right? There's gonna be an age gate and there's gonna be a box to check. You consent to see information regarding, you know, medical cannabis, you know, including, you know, targeted marketing and things like that. We get consents when people sign up for the profiles. I think that'll happen. And I think a lot of this is there's other laws that already, you know, guard against, you know, some of these things. And yeah, tomorrow morning I could, you know, call up an email list, right? I could get in touch with some of my old clients I used to represent against the FTC. I'm sure they've got email lists crazy, right? Like, you could do all that stuff, but I feel like there's other law that already guards against that. And I feel like we've already been allowing a lot of this for pharmacies, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think the sky has fallen, yet due to some of these activities. And I think that the processors are just asking to be on par, right? And I've always been a believer in we just need to make these marketing and advertising rules uniform. And I think that's what I'm hearing from Matt, today. There's of course considerations, right? But if what's good for the goose is good for the, gander, in my opinion, and that's what I've heard, being asked for, today. I do want to move ahead, though, not to a new agenda item, but I
Well,
do want to
just
take.
one comment
Yep.
is, one way to avoid just friends signing up friends, or as a dual identification, is to have them enter their card number. Not just click a box saying 21 or older, because you can do that for a buddy. But if you have to actually enter in your medical cannabis card number, then that serves as almost like a duo identification.
And we talked about doing that in the beginning, but then pharmacies aren't expected to do that. So then that would be something that we're expecting above.
Well, yeah, whatever we do, it would be like,
Yeah.
not a standard, it would be brand new that the pharmacies would
Yes.
have to do.
It would just then be an additional cost, because then we'd have to link with EVS to verify that number, and what happens if that card's not active anymore? And they expire. I mean, do you continue to email them? I mean, there's a lot of what ifs that you can talk about.
And one thing to remember is when let's say that my 15-year-old decides to just run amok and get herself on a medical cannabis website here in Utah, she's going to see product. It's not recreational. It looks medical. So it's not like, I mean, you can see more recreational style things at the mall at a CBD kiosk. So I don't think them signing up for emails is going to lead to any recreational use. I don't feel like there's any danger there. If somebody, I mean, I don't think it happens. I think it would be a very boring thing to do. But if somebody decided to, I don't think there's a lot of risk there.
Okay, anything else from the board for right now? I do want to take some public comment, because I know we're going to have kind of a few things to vote on. Anything else from board members? Okay, we'll open it up first to those in the room. For this one, I have Alyssa and Nareth, at least here in the room, and then we'll open it up to anyone online. Alyssa, you were first, so go ahead. Plus, all right, Nareth, you're ready. Your turn, my friend.
Yeah, honestly, based on what was.
Please just, state your name and your affiliation. Yep.
A lot of been said in terms of what I was gonna bring up, but really, I think what it really comes down to is JD's echo is just really fair playing field, what it comes down to. You could go onto any drug manufacturer's website, whether it's Pfizer or Bayer or whoever, and go find a prescription drug and learn about that product and get information. And really, that's the only area where processors have an ability to communicate their USPs and their differentiation. Because right now, there quite frankly are no standards from a pharmacy e-commerce site perspective. There are pharmacy sites that don't have product images, don't have product information, don't even have information about the brand, and it's not accurate information. And so I think there leads a processor out to, well, even if you have my product, nothing actually dictates that you have to put the description that I give to you. There's nothing that actually communicates that. And you could go on any number site and actually see generic images of products, which is actually grossly misleading to a patient trying to buy a product, and they see some generic chocolate bar as the image for the product. So I think if we're going to allow processors and pharmacies that there's going to create a great deal of confusion from that perspective, that there isn't some level of standards of what needs to be displayed on a website. There's actually nothing in statute that talks about any of that information at all. And I think that's actually a great disservice to the patient already, even if you're a processor on somebody's shelf. So I'd like that to take into consideration if we're expanding the ability for people to market. What are those standards that people are requiring, right? Are you required to list the cannabinoid profile, the terpene profile? Those are inconsistencies as exist right now, right? There's some level of policing and auditing and looking to make sure that labeling is accurate, but man, if you don't even know what the cannabinoid or terpene content is on the website, what are you buying online? For our business, 70% of our transactions originate online, whether you pick it up online, pick it up at a drive-through or go somewhere else. So I think for consumer protection and transparency, there needs to be accurate information being displayed and a real intent by pharmacies to display information accurately.
Thanks, Nick.
With the Utah Cannabis Association. I think most of what's been discussed is what we have discussed internally, and so I feel like we're pretty much on board with processor, targeted marketing. There were a couple things that you brought up, Trevor, that I don't feel like we've addressed. One of them was, that there was concern over processors being able to make claims that their products are better than other companies, but that's already in statute as well, and I just wanted to point that out, that it's prohibited for any pharmacy to make those claims already, and so I feel like that was kind of something that needed to be addressed. And then, the other thing that wasn't discussed that I'm curious to hear your thoughts on was the ability to put pricing on websites. And I wanted to make sure that I emphasize that the association believes that pricing should remain with pharmacy licenses. It shouldn't be given to the process.
Do you have anybody online? I know you're only running 2 laptops from 6 of these.
I had anybody fill out
The form, do we have any hands raised by chance? Check.
I see one hand raised. Jay, do you see him?
It's just in there, I guess it's in there, shows up, nice, but we'll see. Can we unmute that?
I don't think it'll allow me, but if you go. Yeah, participants. There you go.
Okay, Jay, we're gonna unmute you and then I'll turn the timer on.
Jay, go ahead.
Okay, hi guys. Thanks for allowing me the opportunity to speak. This is Justin Ariolo from Life Elevated Processing. We're the Heal You brand. And I just wanted to speak out in favor of allowing processors, whether it's advertising, and I kind of hesitate to use the advertising word just because of the legislature's feelings on advertising generally around this product. But being able to be patient on where our products are, which pharmacies are taking product deliveries, and when those deliveries go out would be very helpful for us. Right now, we can't notify anybody of what we're actually doing. I am not inclined to put a billboard up on I-15, or really the only thing I wanted to be able to do is to reach out and educate, and even if it's just to the patients that are in the program that are carded, that's okay with me. Just be able to basically follow suit with what the pharmacies are doing, whether it's through our social engagement programs or a website, and really just specifically stating like, hey, here's where our deliveries are going. Here are the products that are going out. Here's when you can anticipate having those products being available on shelves. That would be a game changer for us. We would love the opportunity to educate about what makes our processes different and what makes our process or our products different. Nareth mentioned the differentiation around SKUs. I think that's very important for any company. And we would look to, follow all the same rules that the pharmacies are following, whether it's opt-in only, whether it's an opt-in through the patient, database, however that looks, and however the state puts that together. And so when we talk about advertising, it's not like we want to run ads in any publication per se. We just want to be able to notify patients about what's being delivered, where it's being delivered, and when they can expect to see it on shelves.
Thanks, Justin. Appreciate it. Any more online? No. Okay, looks like we'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the board for potential action or some additional discussion. If anybody has any, otherwise we can take action.
we have a quick clarification on the question of if processors would be required to list cannabinoids. In R 383-7-18, which is that targeted marketing piece, it says that when posting promotional information about a medical cannabis product for sale online, the medical cannabis pharmacy shall list the concentration of each cannabinoid as a percentage and the total contained amount of each cannabinoid content measured in milligrams. And then there's a B there that talks about for flower, cannabinoid as a percentage, so.
And that just went into effect recently, right, with one of the rule changes? That's a recent change, isn't it, Rich?
That's been in place for many months. It was just modified.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There was a little clarification that was made where you could choose for flour between percentages and milligrams. It gave that optionality, but for processed products, it's always been percentages, milligrams, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so if someone is aware of a website that does not do that,
They can report it
to ag and they can investigate.
Certainly.
And the way I read this would mean if you consent to the targeted marketing, you get the weekly email from, X processor. If they're promoting specific products in that email, it would have to list cannabinoid content. If we keep it in line with this.
I would imagine that they would, right?
Yeah.
That's gonna be one of the selling points for their products, right? And the information patients wanna know. Okay, well,
So just really quick, I have
go ahead,
a
Jimmy.
really quick question, if I have a second. So from what I'm hearing, the goal here is to notify patients, and I really think that the kind of the dual authentication of verifying that the email list are patients is a good idea. I'm just curious, how burdensome would that be?
Very.
Very?
Yeah, because I shop at 6 different pharmacies. What if I had to come up with, how many processors are in the state? I'd want a user account for each one of those.
Yeah, but you would be able to use the same number.
Yeah, but it's just something that can go wrong that I've got to log into, that I can get locked out of, so many problems.
A username and a password.
Yeah,
Or I'm just saying a verification to where, if I want to sign up to be on a email list, I just have to provide my information along with my medical marijuana card before it gets emailed out there. You just need to verify that person is an actual valid patient, so.
It could even be done when you're creating your account initially, in order to create your account.
well, and then I have to, I'm a patient and I'm a caregiver, so I have a child with a card too, so.
There probably is a way to integrate, when people sign up for profiles on our account, right? They have to enter their medical cannabis card, right? And there's a short verification process that happens behind the scenes. So our head of technology might be willing to do some of that, but that's not currently. Yes, of course, you have to validate you're a patient before you can shop, but you don't necessarily have to validate you're a patient before you can
Every
view,
time.
kind of what is out there. But I would imagine Matt would probably, the way he'll collect emails and all those things is to have people sign up for profiles, on their website, right? So then they'll get consent through that, and then those things can be sent. And so they'll only be being sent to, theoretically, people that can provide, a valid PAT number. But that's gonna be the question, is that integration? But I don't want to speak for our head of technology, but he has figured out how to do that. And it might be a service that we could offer. But I think people find, look, to Derek's point, if you can go on Pfizer's website and find out about a very similar, controlled substance, with none of this type of entering patient information or anything, and you're gonna come to a processor's website to find out that same information, and as long as, Scooby-Doo or something isn't appearing on there, or it's very dripping pie packaging or whatever it is that's gonna be appealing to children or otherwise run afoul, I think people should be able to get that information. I don't tend to think that kids are gonna see that and somehow get information about cannabis that they couldn't go and get about potentially maybe even a more significant, substance, right? So. Just to my 2 cents, but like I said, there might be a way to do that if we say so, or the legislature says so. So probably time for board action if we want to take some on the question of advertising, targeted marketing. Don't know how specific any of you all want to get in terms of what that targeted marketing would then look like. It could be something as simple as we want We recommend that the legislature adopt, statutes and or the departments adopt rules in line with what is currently available to pharmacy, obviously making the necessary tweaks that it fits for processors. So we can go as general or specific as you all want. So I can make the motion, somebody else can, happy to, but I think we probably should take some action here on this.
Yeah, thank you. I was gonna ask. There we go. Perfect. And that's not obviously comprehensive, but some of the larger points of play.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve as for medical cannabis processor advertising and targeted marketing as written. There you go.
So I think we do want to make.
Number one.
Yeah, I think
It's
it's
written as number one, so allow processor advertise, well, that's what I said, advertise marketing and targeted marketing, yeah, to allow.
I'll second it.
okay,
Can we get a point of clarification first?
of course.
I think, I'm not confident that we know exactly what we're approving in terms of what's gonna be, going to the point that was brought up by the first speaker from Dragonfly. Do we know what we're approving as far as what's gonna be permitted with advertising?
It's already regulated in what they can and cannot do. As far as a pharmacy, they're limited. There's limited advertising, limited targeted
Isn't it
marketing.
right in this?
So
And
maybe a
so-
bit of an addendum to your motion is allow number one, processors to engage in advertising and targeted marketing. Falling in exact line with existing statute and rules
Yes.
as it applies to pharmacies.
Yes,
But there's a caveat there too, because there's going to have to be
Tweaks, yeah.
some tweaks to make
Yes.
it make sense for pharmacists, for processors. I think what we're saying is allow them to advertise and target market in the same way as pharmacies, obviously making necessary amendments, based upon, what they're doing. It's not going to be any different than what is currently being allowed for pharmacies. Now, there may need to be some tweaks because like I said, they don't have necessarily a service, right? Pharmacies provide home delivery, right? That's a service we can market, right? Well, we also provide like online consultations. You could market and advertise that, right? Theirs may be a little bit different, but I think it's consistent with the general parameters that are set forth for pharmacies, right? To say that they can't run afoul of these things, but maybe some of the particulars might still be a little bit open-ended, and I'm here to tell you the legislature is probably gonna wanna, look at some of those things. So I think what we're saying now is it would be a motion to approve advertising and targeted marketing in line with current existing laws and rules for pharmacy advertising, understanding that you may need to make some tweaks
Yes.
that make sense for processors.
yes.
And a little caveat, if you look through the second half of this slide that's being posted now. In regard to card verification requirements. You don't have to decide something about that right now.
Right.
Right now, if someone goes online, there is not a card verification requirement. So the board could choose to leave that for later, or the board could choose to consider that now as part of the motion, but prices and discounts. Right now, a pharmacy, of course, they advertise their price, or they target market their price, right? And they target market discounts. But would a processor be allowed to target market a price, target market a discount? Shipments to pharmacies. I think
There-
it was important that be clear
Yes.
if targeted marketing includes that or not.
I think we need to be clear because we can't allow a processor who cannot sell their medication to offer a discount or list a price. That wouldn't make any sense. So I think we need to be clear that that couldn't be part of it unless we're going to allow them to sell it. Maybe, and when I have to be honest, when Matt said it, he blinked out a little bit, so I didn't hear his what he said we were voting on. So I would need him to repeat that anyway, but I think we need to be clear that that is in there. Unless we just want to say that we're going to be making some tweaks that are appropriate for the processors.
Well, I think it's then two motions, right? I think the first motion is, do we agree generally that they should be able to engage in processor advertising and targeted marketing generally in line with agreed upon principles for pharmacies. And then if we agree to that, then we can take a second motion for anything particularly that we want to allow processors to engage in from an advertising or from a targeted marketing perspective. So I think that there's a general motion to be made, and then there's probably a more specific motion to be made about which under this kind of right-hand side of this slide that we should allow for or not. So I think Matt was making the general motion. Don't want to speak for him. I'll let him make the motion again if he'd like to, and then we can entertain a more specific motion if someone deems that appropriate.
So really quick, sorry, one more question on this. So on the pharmacies, so their targeted marketing, so it's not defined, so it doesn't have to be patients, or does it have to
It
be
is
patients?
defined.
It
It
does
is
not have to
defined
be
on who you
patients.
can engage. They have to be of a certain age, and they
It's
have
not-
to
it's not
consent,
defined.
i.e. request to receive that type of information from you. It can only be done in three places. Electronic communication, right? Email, online, SMS, those types of things. The materials can be made, target marketing materials can be made in physical format or digital format inside of a pharmacy, or you can hold an event inside the cardholder only area of the pharmacy and engage in that target marketing. So a lot of this stuff is all been well laid out for pharmacies, so we wouldn't be shooting in the dark
Yeah,
at everything. There's already good regulation in place. We would need to consider this second column because of the differences, the inherent differences between a processor and a pharmacy.
Put it this way. They don't want processors emailing prices.
yeah,
That's really what it comes down to.
yeah.
It's, I mean, at the end of the day, and again, I kind of brought it up earlier on, is most pharmacies have different prices for items across the state. So that's, I mean, if a processor is trying to email, say, hey, go find this item, it should be $59.99. And they go to 4 different pharmacies and all different, and you're just upset what it is. So I don't see, I mean, it's a win for us to get targeted advertising, targeted marketing. That's where I want it. We're not gonna be putting pricing on there, but if you want to put that clause into it, we can. I think the other thing we're looking at is what JD brought up is, as a processor, I cannot go to a pharmacy and hold a pop-up event to talk about Riverside Farm. If I want to, I have to spend months with the Department of Ag and coming up with approved literature and statements that I can say and what I can do in there. Whereas having this ability, this is now then targeted marketing, it makes it a little bit more open.
Yeah.
So,
No, for me, and just the way I'm gonna vote here, I'm just trying to make sure I
Yeah.
understand how I'm voting. And I think it's fair, obviously, for the processors and the pharmacies to be on the same playing field, but to me, I get hung up on it's to notify patients. And so for me to vote for it, I would like to see it be restricted to where there's a card verification. So I just want to make sure whatever, for me, if I'm gonna vote yes, there needs to be some type, I just need to clarify that there's card verification.
Cardholder would be new. That's a cloud change statute.
Yeah, and that would be something that we don't expect from pharmacies either, so we would have to, I would, and to be fair, like when I am talking to a lot of patients, about using product, oftentimes I have them get onto the website and say, hey, well, look at these tinctures. And so you're going to want to look at something like this. I take them directly to a website in order to look at one. So in order to kind of understand the market and the product that is available. So I don't want to handicap and in the beginning, in my first proposal, I did have that they had to have a patient ID, but then I scaled back on that because prospective patients or patients that are looking at, possibly coming from the black market into the medical market, they want to see the products that are available before they make that leap.
Or to return.
Yeah.
Rich, go ahead.
Just one other factor is a lot of medical providers like to go and be able to view, although they're not patients. And there's a way to, require that they type in, but we have any physician, MD, DO, APRN, or PA, that's able to recommend medical cannabis, but they don't register with us. So that's just a unique factor to consider, is that gate, if it's cardholders, would stop a medical provider from being able to do that research. I don't know the stats on how many actually do that, but.
And folks who are genuinely curious about the program, right? We have done, I can't say specifically today, whether we've done any cannabis curious, consults, but sometimes patients will come in and we'll provide, non-patients will come in that are considering joining the program. I think to stunt that and just say it's just patients, where we're not doing that today for the pharmacies, just seems like another way for people to fall out or never to get in touch with, cannabis, generally, it just seems like another hurdle, that we're not doing, today. So, okay, if there's no further discussion, but happy to take more discussion if there is, we'll probably return to Matt. I'll let him kind of.
Can I point out
Yeah, go
something?
ahead.
I mean, I can get on GoodRx and look at prices of all prescription drugs the same way. So patients have access and can shop that way and look at prices. Why wouldn't we do the same thing for cannabis patients and allowing them at least, hey, this is what you can expect to pay for this. You're paying way too much. I mean, a lot of people are paying out of pocket for this stuff and cash. Insurance isn't paying for it. A lot of people have kids that already take a lot of medical requirements that aren't this. So that's another thing to take into consideration.
Another item I'll just mention, and I understand pharmacies do this now, is that the names of the products, the strain names are outrageous and they sound like candy, right? Everybody acknowledges that. Most of them do sound like they're consuming Skittles, and that's just how the market is. We get it, and that's allowed currently. But its reality is that you go and the way that the product is described, you'll find that it is different in nature than how you hear a regular product in an FDA-approved drug market described. And there is a primary focus on a strain name of the very creative names that people come up with for their strains, right? When there's a strain name that's a focus. And the unique way that cannabis has come about, we understand there's people put a lot of connection between treating a condition to a particular strain, right? And so the current landscape allows that, we get it. But that's just a factor to consider, is there will be a lot of these products, the information about them oftentimes uses a strain name that sounds recreational on its face.
All right, any more comments from the board, or we'll return to Matt and we'll have him make his motion again?
Yeah.
You want me to read it back?
Yeah, you can read it back. It's long now.
Yeah, it was.
I was trying to make it easy.
Yeah, it was brilliant when you said it. No.
So for this first vote, we have a vote to approve allowing processor advertising and targeted marketing generally falling in line with current existing laws and rules for advertising and targeted marketing restrictions for medical cannabis pharmacies.
Exactly.
You see that?
And I'm gonna
I
second
did.
that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Abby, will you please take the roll call vote?
JD Lauritsen,
Yay.
Matthew Page.
Yes.
Desiree Hennessy,
Yes.
Misty Smith,
Yes.
Jimmy Higgs.
Yes.
Nanette Berenzi,
Yes.
and Annalise Keene.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Now, I think the question is, this right side of the slide. Look, I think the one thing, Matt nailed it on the head. I think the one thing that, when I have talked with folks, the big concern has been the idea around being able to advertise price, suggested price, discounts, any of those types of things. Now, to be clear, a pharmacy cannot engage in that type of behavior in general advertising to the public, right? They can only provide information regarding price and discounts through targeted marketing. I don't like the idea of card verification requirements for the reasons that we talked about. I think the idea of medical claims and potential benefits is dealt with by other law and other portions of the statutes that already apply to targeted marketing and education. The ideas of shipments that are going to be made to a pharmacy or have just been made, I think that sounds great. Specific products that are available at pharmacies, I think that sounds great. So I think, Matt, and please chime in here, and anyone from the public if they want to, that's a processor. I think it's the idea of creating awareness around your company and the products that you all offer, and then where a patient can go and find those products at a given time. That to me should be the parameters, in my opinion, around the concept of targeted marketing is what products do you all have? What's the education on those products? Where can patients find those? you know what I mean? And I think that's, to me, that would be the parameters around the targeted marketing. I think you'd remove the ability to target market around price discounts, incentives, anything like that. That remains in the hands of the pharmacy. I understand the reasoning for wanting that, but I think then that is going to be a slippery slope that next thing you know, who knows what other information is going to be requested and out there. And look, there are different business models that people take. Yes, there are some people that will sell the exact same product at a different price. They may have a myriad of reasons for doing that. And unless we really want to pull the hood up on everyone's business dealings, I think that's a good place to stop. Awareness, availability, and this is where the patients can go to get that, and education around your products. But that's kind of how I see it playing out. So I would say no to price and discounts, no to card verification requirements. We already are controlling for the claims and anything you can say about benefits, and then really yes to where is it and when can I get it, and what are your products all about, and the general education around it.
And putting this in perspective on the pricing, this is only affecting 5 businesses. It's those that are not vertically integrated. Because the current process is pharmacies that have a processing facility, right? Because now they can do their own special type of advertising, but they're already doing that today. They're currently emailing their prices out for their products. So, I mean, really what we're saying is you have 5 independent processors who can't notify patients about what their prices are. Now, again, the hard thing is there's no control on that pricing. And it's whatever the relationship you have as a processor with the pharmacy, that's probably what they're selling, is they're gonna market to. I think people bring up all the time that they want us to be a free market, and pricing is a part of any type of market that's out there. And if a processor chooses to list their price or their suggested price, that should be up to probably to the processor. It just kind of again, that goes back to that unequal playing field that we've been dealing with, that we just voted on to correct with at least targeted marketing and advertising. So.
Yeah, but and to that point, it was an unequal playing field on entry as well. The pharmacies had to deal with a lot more oversight, a bigger RFP, a lot more fees in order to be in a position where they could advertise, price, and sell product. So there was it was a very different entrance into the program. Processors go in, they pay what is like $150,000 to get a license, and we have had that open. So anybody could be a processor at this point if they had the money and could set up shop. We've expected more from our pharmacies. We've expected that they have a pharmacist on staff, and then they are offering to sell the product to patients for a condition, and that's why they're setting the cost. So yes, it's not fair, but it's not fair either. The setup isn't fair. The setup is completely different as well.
All right, any more board discussion?
And who would have, so just from a practical standpoint, if there was a complaint registered about, say, a advertisement or a website, would that then fall on ag?
Yeah.
Still, okay. Just so that's clear.
Like the Cody.
So it comes under their oversight.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Obviously, the feds too, if you say.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're a little bit behind, so we probably want to make a motion here, so we can get to the next portion of this, which is going to be the specialty product requests. I imagine that the tax credits and decoupling will go pretty quick, so we probably shouldn't need much time for that. Would anyone like to make a motion on kind of the more specifics around targeted marketing? Okay, I guess I can make a motion then. I would motion that we approve, targeted marketing from a processor perspective to include, information regarding the products that the processor has available. when those products are shipped to or received by a pharmacy. And, that got anything you want to add? Other than price, because I'm not gonna add it, we can add that in our motion. And I guess I would specifically say to disallow or prohibit, processors from listing prices or discounts as part of their targeted marketing and keeping that specifically with the pharmacies.
Real quick, what's it saying current statute though? Because I think we want to try to, anytime we can mirror what's currently there, it's easier. So I mean, they can't make any unsuspected health claims. Any claims that are like cure, so they can't do any claims like that. But did you say something they have to list like cannabinoids and percentages on target?
It's
Target marketing.
it's in a rule.
Yeah.
Okay,
And I guess the way we could redo the motion is we've already said that we want to allow them to generally engage in targeted marketing consistent with rules for pharmacies. So maybe my motion would just be that, I motion that they be prohibited from listing any pricing or discounts or other incentives as part of their targeted marketing, because that's really what would not be consistent with what's currently allowed from a pharmacy perspective. So.
yeah, I think that's a better language.
Yeah.
What about card verification?
That's an additional thing that we looked at adding.
Yeah, and
That's
that's
not in
not
the-
currently in
Yeah.
statute, so I don't think we would need to prohibit it. If someone wants to make a motion to require card verifications, we can do that, but I think the way I'm making my motion is to say, we've already, unanimously voted in favor of a motion that allows, recommends, processors be allowed to engage in advertising and targeted marketing generally consistent with pharmacies. However, the second piece of the second motion is, however, we do not recommend that they be allowed to list anything in relation to, pricing, discounts, or incentives, which pharmacies are allowed to do. Rich, go
I
ahead.
just wanted to make a quick point and a suggestion is that the current definition of targeted marketing, it separates the information that is digitally available from the information that is physically seen in a pharmacy setting, right? And when it comes to the information that is physically seen or like digitally displayed in a pharmacy, the language of the law, it does say a card holder. But if the board could make a recommendation that that be clarified and that the card holder requirement be removed in relation to physical display in a physical setting of a medical cannabis pharmacy card holder only limited area, right? Because we do have the case of a visitor coming in who is the current law, you can allow a parent to bring a child in with them. And also someone giving a tour, a medical provider who wants to tour, they are not a card holder, but they're physically in there getting a tour. So that may be a little caveat to it would be an amendment to the definition of targeted marketing that would make it, would just remove some language that says card holder. And it would be up to the board if they wanted to recommend that.
Is it, but it only says card holder only area, right, of the pharmacy, not that it's only available to a card holder, right? I mean, presumably, you're not going to be giving, I've not seen anyone giving these targeted marketing things out to non-card holders in the card holder only area of the pharmacy, right? It
Right.
does say only card holder only area. Or am I
The
confused?
language, the way it's worded, it needs to be clarified.
So I mean, I think that's probably one we want to bring up at a later.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
That's
put it on the
that's-
agenda.
That's a definition
Yeah.
of targeted marketing that we can leave. for
Yeah.
the
Yes,
meeting.
because I have two things I want to bring up about drive-through and home delivery as well on the targeted marketing front. So
Sure.
let's table that for the next one, but, all right, so my motion is that, consistent with the first motion, we allow processor targeted marketing and advertising. However, as part of targeted marketing, we prohibit a processor from providing any information regarding pricing, discounts, or incentives.
Just have that, I have it written down, vote to prohibit processors from listing pricing, discounts, or incentives for medical cannabis products in targeted marketing.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Do we have,
I'll second
do
that
we have a
motion.
second?
JD Larson,
Yes.
Matt Page,
Yes.
Desiree Hennessy,
Sorry, yes.
Misty Smith,
Yes.
Jimmy Higgs,
Yes.
Nanette Redby,
Yes.
and Annalise.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, everybody. All right, we'll turn to item number 7 on the agenda. Like I said, item number 8, I think is gonna be pretty short, so I don't think we're gonna need a full 30 minutes on the tax credits. So I'll turn it back over to Trevor for his presentation on medical cannabis specialty product requests.
All right. Get our presentation up. You, Abby. I would like to mention, the name of this item on the agenda, medical cannabis specialty product request. We kind of changed it at the last minute to broaden it a little, so memo is actually titled Strategies to Address Medical Cannabis Product Availability Concerns. And we changed that name at the last minute because I got many different proposals about this proposal. So there'll actually be more than just that product request system that the board could vote on. But let's go ahead and start. Okay, so a quick presentation outline. First, let's identify the problem of patient access and why we're talking about this today. Evidence of that problem. And we'll talk about 3 different ways that a patient product request system might work. And then the last 2 are 2 alternate proposals to the product request system, which is more pharmacy licenses or voting to recommend a minimum shelf space mandate. Let's go ahead. Okay, so the definition of the problem we're trying to solve is that some patients can't find the product needed to treat their condition at their pharmacy nearest to them or through delivery. Patients feel that for whatever reason, they can't find the product they need. And the memo also says, you know, that it could be that it's not carried by a pharmacy, it's out of stock, the formulation might have changed, and the product's no longer available. Next. So some evidence of the problem, we have the 2022 medical cannabis market survey, which I think was conducted in November of last year, October, November. And as you can see by these 2 questions, to the question, Utah pharmacies consistently have the products I need, 27% disagreed, 61% agreed. And to the question, Utah pharmacies have a good variety of available products, 25% disagreed, 57% agreed. So at face value, that means around a quarter of patients in this survey. And I don't think it was necessarily limited to patients, but that's most likely who was filling out the majority of the 8,000 responses, said that they, for whatever reason, can't find the products they need consistently, or there's not enough diversity of products at their pharmacies. The memo also references a search through some patient complaint logs that uncovered a handful of complaints over the past 2 years about out of stock issues, pharmacies not carrying certain things, lack of options, formulas being changed, etc. So measuring evidence here is difficult, but if we take the survey, which is the largest piece of evidence we might be able to point to, a quarter of patients are dissatisfied with access. Okay, so is there support for a patient product request ordering system? As mentioned before on this item too, I talked to all 14 processor companies and 12 of the 15 pharmacies, and it was split 50-50 as to whether a processor should be able to receive a patient product request as opposed to a pharmacy, or the third option, a state-run system. So let's talk about number 1, which is just the status quo. A pharmacy facilitating a patient request. The way this most likely works today is that a patient requests their pharmacy through email, call, or talking to their pharmacist that they need a specific product. And let's say that that pharmacy doesn't have it. The product could be made available for purchase by the pharmacy, either from contacting a processor, saying, hey, I'd like to get that product for this patient. They could buy it from another pharmacy and get it for that patient. But one way or another, that's not required on the pharmacy to fulfill that sort of special product order, right? The pharmacy, more than likely will try to find a comparable product available that day in that pharmacy for that patient. Okay, next. So those who supported keeping things as it is with the pharmacy voluntarily conducting these requests said that market forces should determine what products are made available for purchase at Utah pharmacies, and requiring that a pharmacy fill these requests, in a compulsory manner, would be too much government involvement in the market. Number two, pharmacies should always have confidence and control over the products they sell. What a pharmacist is charged with purchasing in their pharmacy should be their business, and a pharmacy shouldn't be required to dispense a product they're not comfortable with. Number three, pharmacies are the patient-facing part of our program by design. And so licensees and support keeping things the way that it's said, why allow an entirely separate licensee to start conducting transactions and fulfilling requests when that should remain with the pharmacy, which was originally intended to be that portal for the patient to the program, along with their medical provider. Those against keeping things the way they are said, if pharmacies aren't required to do these requests, then nothing will change. Pharmacies are not necessarily incentivized to fulfill product requests if it's going to be onerous, logistically challenging, and especially if the pharmacist believes there's a comparable product on the shelf ready to go. So there was great doubt that pharmacies would fulfill these requests, especially even if a patient is adamant, I want this product from this processor. Some processors felt like they just wouldn't listen and fulfill those requests. So the second potential, not the status quo, something new, would be a processor facilitated patient product request system. So how it might work here is that a processor, and as we were just talking about with advertising and targeted marketing on their website, maybe they have a list of their products and there's a form, a fillable form or a button that they can press and see what products that processor has set aside for a patient product request. And so the patient will go there, they'll see, the whole price of the product, from whatever that processor wants to charge to the cost of delivery, and a pharmacy location that would be either willing to take in that order from the processor, or they could be mandated by law that any processor that gets a request can drop it off at any pharmacy. And that pharmacy must fill that order as a condition of their license. But that's the processor side of this proposal. So those four said that this would allow patients to have a much more expanded scope of products at their fingertips, right? If you have a local pharmacy that doesn't carry what you prefer, maybe what you want to experiment with, then a patient now has an ability, an alternate route to find that product and to get it to the pharmacy nearest to them. Number two, market forces do not always advance patient access in a way that patients feel like is fair. A pharmacy gets to choose what products it stocks, and if it doesn't stock the product you want and is unable or unwilling to fulfill a product request order, then that patient may be out of luck. Number three, pharmacies will feel more pressure to sell a better variety of products, and patients need a better supply of products. And this was a big point for many processors, that why is it in our program that if a product simply isn't available at a pharmacy one way or another, that patient loses out. But 12 out of 15 pharmacies are vertical is worth mentioning. So with the question, patients need a better supply, some processors thought that vertically integrated pharmacies will continue to consolidate their sales and their inventory around their product and their vertical chain, which is going to start shortening the list of products from different processors that a patient would be able to see. So if a processor is able to facilitate these requests, the patient isn't reliant on that pharmacy and what that pharmacist chooses to stock at that pharmacy. Those against, number one, Medical providers and pharmacists, not processors, are best educated to guide patients. This harkens back to a point a little earlier that pharmacies and pharmacists are best equipped to help patients find the product they need, and allowing a patient to venture off to a processor without the validation of the pharmacist checking that it's in line with the recommendation from their medical provider, or that the pharmacist might see contraindications. That processor is not equipped, as well as a pharmacist and a pharmacy, to be able to ensure that order is sound. Number two, prices and discounts may have too much influence on a patient's choice of product due to the fact that the product is being ordered off the processor website. If the patient is buying it from the processor, that processor may be able to undercut a pharmacy's price. Maybe if the patient wants to buy 10 units on a product request order, the processor is willing to offer it at near wholesale price for no delivery fee. That might incentivize some patients to just stop going to pharmacies and do product requests. Number three, pharmacy and processor websites that reflect the same or similar information and pricing may cause confusion to the patients. If you have product A at X pharmacy and product A at Y processor, and they're different prices, maybe there's different information based on how the processor describes it versus the pharmacy describes it, that might ultimately lead patients towards confusion. Number four, processors would likely find transportation of product request orders too cost prohibitive, particularly if I live in Cache Valley and I want a product from the Utah County processor. How many processors in Utah County would actually want to drive that all the way up to Logan? Probably not many. Number five, pharmacies should not be required to store and dispense a product they are uncomfortable with and may know little about. So next slide. So the final potential for this proposal is a state facilitated patient product request system. So similar to the previous proposal, a processor would post the inventory of the available items for a product request, but on a state website as opposed to their own. And this state website would aggregate everything that all the processors would want to set aside for those orders. Patient goes to that state website and sees everything available from those processors for this type of order. And again, similar to the processor proposal, it would include the total price and the pharmacies that it would be available at, and presumably under law be required to be at. If you want it at whatever pharmacy you want, then you could get it there. Then the state in that system would notify the processor and the pharmacy that a patient product request order has been received, and the processor is going to fulfill it, presumably either at that point of sale or shortly thereafter. The processor would contact the pharmacy and the patient, let them know how long it's going to take to get there. And then finally, the processor would have to deliver that to the pharmacy to ultimately be dispensed to the patient. So those for this proposal said that patients have more power over the types of products they can order online and pick up at the pharmacy nearest to them, which is a similar point to the previous proposal. But instead of having to go to separate processors' websites and seeing what's there, you go to one central location with everything. Number two, pharmacies will feel more pressure to sell a better variety of products. Again, similar to the previous one, pharmacies will most likely want to compete with the patient product orders on this system, and are going to most likely try to stock a wider diversity of products and cater to patients' needs rather than being coerced by this system. Number three, the state facilitated product request system could incentivize licensees to work together. Similar to number two, but if a processor and a pharmacy, particularly a pharmacy, doesn't want to be required by law to fulfill a patient product request order, they may just start building a relationship with a processor that they don't have a relationship with. And that ultimately is the best for patients when licensees work together. Arguments against the state facilitated product request system would be the software would be challenging for the state to manage. Kind of similar to the market inventory proposal, you would have to pull this set aside inventory from all, whichever processors want to be involved, and somehow have that in a patient-facing portal and be accurate with all the information the patient needs to know. Number two, The state shouldn't obligate licensees to work together. Again, I think that was kind of covered in the previous ones, but a pharmacy shouldn't be required, according to some, to dispense a product they're not comfortable with. And a processor shouldn't, by law, be allowed to do that. Number 3, concerns about favoring non-vertical licensees. This was a concern among half of processors that I talked to, that a state system would largely benefit independent processors and cultivators that aren't getting their products in certain pharmacies today. And that this state system, a criticism of it was that it essentially an alternate pharmacy endorsed by the state for the sake of licensees that may not be able to compete today, as well as others. So some options I heard to reduce pricing of this product request system, whether it's the pharmacy, the processor, or the state that takes in the system. Again, the largest concern of folks was nobody does this because it'd be really expensive. So here's 3 considerations from folks to reduce that price and either incentivize pharmacies to do this more, or under the other proposals, merely make it cheaper. Number 1, the patient product request order could be delivered with regularly scheduled processor shipments, as opposed to a one-off where, a van takes a single product, 1, 2, 3 hours away. So that patient would just be notified instead of tomorrow. It's going to take 2 weeks to get there. Number 2, the state could hire a vendor to transport these products between processors and pharmacies. And that way, processors and pharmacies wouldn't have to charge the patient a delivery fee. Number 3, I suppose this may be more of a clarification, but that the processor or the pharmacy could be allowed to require as many units in that order as they wish. The patient wants 1 tincture, and it would be significantly expensive for the processor to get it to the pharmacy and then the pharmacy to hold it and dispense it. Either licensee under either proposal could say, well, you have to buy 5 or 10, and that'll help make it more feasible for us from a cost perspective. So here's our recommendations, or potential recommendations you may make. Number 1.
Oh, we're back.
Oh, they're muted.
Can you hear us? We're back. Sorry, we lost you.
Hey, Abby.
There we go.
There we go. Okay.
Welcome back. Some of them they'll be back in a minute.
We're at a quorum, we can keep going or not. You want to wait, JD?
Sure.
Okay.
All right, give us 3 minutes.
I can answer any questions since we're at a quorum, if anyone.
I would like to ask a question. So on this state-run delivery side, would there be some kind of buy-in? I assume this would be used predominantly by independent processors. Would there be some kind of buy-in that they would pay in to pay the state to do this? Or would this be like socialized and everybody, even competitors, would be obligated to cover the cost of this delivery by the state?
If it's a state-run system, let me clarify, you're saying the state-run system, not necessarily state transportation of the products.
The transportation, especially like building the website, delivering, because this would be an ongoing cost, right? The delivering of these products. Who is paying for that? Like, would that be like a process, or the people using it? Would they have like a buy-in that they pay annually to cover the cost of the couriers or whatever? And setting it, getting all the deliveries ready, would they be paying that, or would the whole program have to pay for that? And what would be the cost to patients if we made that, if we set up this whole other system on top of it?
I mean, I'm happy to let Rich and Brandon or Cody chime in, but
Yeah, Des, that's not set forth in the presentation. That would be determined later.
Yeah, Des, I think
Right.
what we could say is that just not knowing yet is the best answer, but overall, the way that the program's set up now, we don't necessarily want the state itself does not want to start to change the program in a way where it's taking away from the current system that you have to go through pharmacy, the product has to go to that aspect, right? So we don't necessarily want to, we may go, you know, if this is a situation that doesn't work, we may go to a processor to pick it up, but I still think it has to go through that pharmacy there, so we're not missing any of that true, or the way that the program's set up to get to the pharmacies and then the patients. So as far as how well that looks like payment wise, I mean, we could maybe hope against all odds that current fees cover it, but I wouldn't dare make that promise to you either without seriously looking into what looks like.
Yeah, I mean, the details on that could just work out how that's covered. If the board were to want us to take a look at that scenario, we could take a look at different options of how to fund it.
I mean, reading it, it sounds like you'll be my delivery agent, so I'm all in favor. You guys taking that cost.
Talk to that and then we're good.
You can come pick up, drive to St. George every other week.
Gonna have a joystick in my
Yeah.
office.
Yeah, like I'm all for it, but can we take the money out of like the beef industry or something? Because I think cannabis is out.
Said that.
Okay, I do have a question though, about the state-run system. Are there any concerns from a departmental perspective in relation to what Central Fill was? And the arguments that came out against Central Fill and ultimately why it was killed off? What I'm hearing, if you are going to have state employees either aid and abet a federal crime or actually commit a federal crime by delivering cannabis to a patient, are there concerns that this is not just state Central Fill all over again if we put this in the hands of the department?
Well, I think the language said to the pharmacy, not the patient.
Yeah, if I could add on that.
Either way.
Oh,
The
yeah.
concern with the state central fill pharmacy was local health department employees playing a role in the distribution of the medical cannabis product, right, in each of the 13 local health department districts. This would not involve local health department employees at all.
But it would still
Local
involve
health-
state employees.
Yeah,
State employees,
and-
correct?
Right, and one critical difference between local health department employees and state employees is we answer to the governor, and local health department employees don't. They have their own attorneys, and with the state central bill system, there was concern from the attorneys, the district attorneys of the counties, the county attorneys, about the role that they were playing.
Committing a federal crime, correct?
Right.
That would
They're-
still
they're-
apply, that would still apply to you, right, as a state?
Yeah, but we essentially, Utah Department of Ag and Food, they transport when they do.
We pretty much have to
Inspections.
sign a waiver that says we understand we're committing a federal crime. and
Yeah.
Protected within the state, but if the feds have come doors, struggles you get there.
So the same concerns still would remain, right?
Yeah.
Got you,
Right,
just from a maybe slightly different perspective. Just
Yeah.
want to make sure to bring that up because I know that's what sunk the central fill.
yeah,
And I'll say from a processor perspective of doing this, in my personal opinion, this is just another attempt at processor home delivery. If the transaction fee goes through the processor, and they're allowed to fulfill it to the pharmacy, you're just it's a closed door pharmacy, and you're just one step away from saying, now we get to deliver it directly to your home. So those are my concerns about those two systems.
now, one clarification though, in this scenario that was presented in the presentation. It is delivered directly to the pharmacy, and the patient picks it up at the pharmacy. And there is a pharmacist review of each transaction, even in the processor facilitated patient request system. A patient would never be able to purchase a product that was not within the scope of their medical provider's recommendation. Or if there's a pharmacist at the pharmacy where it's delivered that had a concern about dispensing of a product to a patient that is has a certain health condition, that there's still those two checkpoints in the processor process, the processor facilitated. So there is still the QMP and the pharmacist involvement that is not gone. Pharmacists still review 100% of the transactions, and they have the ability to stop it if it does not align with the condition, if it's the
So
QMP.
transaction still goes through the pharmacy, all the PMP work is still done at the pharmacy. The difference is the order itself comes in either to a state run website or to a processor run website? That's the difference those are the two differences you're telling me between what exists today.
Right, the pharmacist at the location where it's being dispensed would have the obligation of reviewing the transaction with the same scrutiny that other transactions are reviewed. Right,
Well, and-
so it still goes through that process.
Aren't we still talking about like one-off items? Like, this is like, I'm gonna make 15 items, get it for one patient, and it's paying for that. That's what we're not talking about, like, all the gummies I make. They're ordering that and shipping. It's talking about someone doing a specialty request. There's a big burden for a processor to deliver one tincture down to, from Box Elder County down to Cedar City. So what they're saying is the state would then come and pick up that one item and drive it down there.
And you'll pay for that.
And
Well, I don't know who's,
Not the rest of us.
I don't know.
Licensees that are not engaged in it.
I don't know who's paying for that. I don't,
Engaged in it.
well, it's with the state delivery, it would be a subsidized.
Bad.
Yeah. And
Bad.
that's what
Type of a
just go with it as
delivery.
is and develop better relationships.
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
yeah. But
And if I could, because what you just said at JD's, I think, and Brandon can expand on this, but I
Yeah.
think the department's, point of view on this is that we do want to make sure that the patients are getting the products that they want and need in as easy as manner as it must be. I don't think that the department, of some place, the Department of Agriculture is not at all going to promote us going, hey, we want to be delivery people, but that being said,
yeah,
we do want to take a hard stance on saying that we do need to get products out to the patients and the products that they want.
Certainly. Hey, Trevor, I did want to ask you a question. When you talk to all the different licensees, especially the 12 out of 15 pharmacy licensees, did you get an idea from them of how many would engage in specialty product requests if it's left voluntary? Like today, did you ask that question of licensees? How many would engage in it as it stands today if we,
Yes.
if we recommend it?
So at least 2 processors said that they'd be willing to do this and to transport the product to a pharmacy, at least not Cedar City and St. George, but along the Wasatch Front for free, that they wouldn't charge it.
Some of them do it now.
yeah, we do it.
Processors?
Well, they.
Process, we deliver to every
I'm
pharmacy
talking
across the
about
state.
Pharmacy facilitator.
I'm talking about processors saying, getting that product to the pharmacy, so there's not a massive delivery cost to the patient. 2 said they would do it for free and eat the cost. From vertically integrated companies, there was, I think, concern that there's already so many comparable products out there, and that some pharmacies felt that we already do our best to carry a diversity of products. And if a patient thinks that this specific product from this processor is the one for them, I'm going to do my best to say, well, I have something with a similar cannabinoid profile and terpenes that may have the same effect for you. So let's give that a try first, and then come back. If it genuinely doesn't work for you, then we can go ahead and try to get something different. So I think the majority of verticals that I spoke to wanted to exhaust options before going to kind of the nuclear option of contacting the processor and then having this sort of complicated system work.
But no pharmacy has told you directly that they would not engage in some type of product request. Did you hear any pharmacy tell you they would not engage in it?
Not explicitly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
Well, I won't be an antagonist.
People
I'll hold my, well, I don't know. I've got kids and I tell my kids, you gonna clean your room today? Yes, I am. You tell him in that, but I mean, he's asking him questions. They're probably gonna give him what he wants to hear. I did get it. Until this program's in place, are we going to see it? I mean, for the last 3.5 years, almost 4 years of being in the industry, we've received very little product requests from patients because there hasn't been a way to do that. I mean, I've only got like 2 emails I can ever think of saying patients would like to see more lower dose. Or
Other industry though, there, that they would probably just carry other product of people that they liked and still not grant the product that they wanted. I'm just chatting.
Yeah, sorry, side conversation. I was asking about minimum shelf space and that idea and getting some feedback.
well, try not to talk.
Sorry, we didn't
We're
hear the
offline.
first part of your conversation. I don't think you heard the first part of our conversation. So.
No, they were all separate but equal. Do you guys want to start first and fill us in?
Okay. So what I brought up is, we've gotten requests for specific items, and that's kind of what we're looking at. I think realistically is, patients just want, this is a very loaded topic. It could have probably been broken into like 4 separate items. But when looking at the kind of what we're presenting here is, I think working with a pharmacy is ideal because you want that pharmacist relationship with a patient. That's where it needs to start from. If there's a product that a pharmacist feels a patient's going to be beneficial from, the request hopefully should be coming from the pharmacist to the processor. Unfortunately, I think this goes back to those that are vertically integrated, those aren't. Typically, the pharmacists, those that are vertically integrated, will reach out to their processing head and say, hey, we're getting requests for this product. They go and then make that product, put it on their shelves and see how it happens. And so that's typically how it's been filled under the status quo. When it comes to independent processors, like I said before, I can only think of 2 emails in the last almost 4 years that a patient has requested a type of product type. And so it's not something that happens all the time. And if it's feasible and we can make it, at Riverside, we've tried to do whatever we can to fill that need when it comes to certain dosing types or requirements. So as a processor or anything, I don't know if it's necessarily trying to require pharmacies to mandatorily participate in requiring. I think hopefully they're doing that today and they're just sharing with themselves internally. I think if you have provided another alternative, I know we've got plenty of emails and websites that the patients have access to complain about products. Well, if they do a separate link right below that, do a product recommendation and then they can compile it and at the end of the month, send out some sort of in their newsletter or whatever, here's what patients are looking for. Sending out to everyone. So that way there's options to growth. I think the only way you're going to see competitive prices when it comes to these types of specialty products are if multiple producers are making it. And then there's actually true competition. When it comes to one product, if you're specializing in one thing, you can just think of insulin.
Yeah.
One company was making it and what they do, they raise the price to where it's uncompetitive, but everyone had to pay for it. And so I think if there's ways to make it so that way there's more access to everyone, and that kind of leads into the more other options we have up there. So
I was going to offer some anecdotal thoughts to expand on what you were saying initially. I talked to a couple of patients who said that they've asked their pharmacist, can you get this for me because it's not on your website, not your inventory. Pharmacist said, oh yeah, sure, and then never followed up with the patient. And then I talked to a couple of processors who said, I have had independents, I should say, who have had some patients email them saying, I've heard about this product. I really want to try it. I can't find it. Can you help me find it? And that processor reaching out to a pharmacy or pharmacies and hearing nothing back, and feeling shut out and having to go back to that patient and saying, I can't find a pharmacy in your area that will respond to me to get the product to you. So just a consideration to add.
And I think that I agree with Trevor because the patients that I've talked to that have had this problem, it's never an unwillingness. I've never ran into an unwillingness. I've never had somebody that has had a product and the pharmacist was like, absolutely, I will not. It's usually just, maybe it happens once they order the product and then they forget the next time. And it's just become, there's no system set up in which this can be tracked. And so it easily falls by the wayside just because they're so busy. So, I just would like to say there's willingness there. But finding the correct system in which to make this available to patients to be able to get the right product to them. I have had patients tell me that they went to the pharmacist and said, this is the product that I need. And they went and found them something comparable that day. Some of them liked it better. There was a large group of them that said that it didn't work as well as the product that they had wanted. And so just being able to get that product that does work for them. So anyway, I don't find an unwillingness, just an inability to have a system. We just don't have a system in place.
So Matt, kind of what you were proposing though was something not like to where there would be something available on the UDAP's website, a link, right? That would take them to a Google form and the patient could provide information of, I'm looking for this product and I don't know where to find it.
Yeah.
that UDAF would then send out, or VHHS would then send out as part of their monthly updates or whatever. Hey, here are products patients are looking for, because it would still be voluntary at that point, right? To say, okay, patients are looking for
Yeah.
these, and then some pharmacies would choose to carry those products or not. I mean, that
Correct.
seems even
That's-
less centralized.
Well, and really, realistically, that should fall back on the pharmacies. If they're not gonna carry the items that they're wanting, then it leads us into item number 2 up there. Do we need to issue additional medical cannabis pharmacy licenses? That will
Correct. You guys
carry
plan to
those
study
items.
that, correct?
What's that?
You guys plan to study that per statute, correct? Do you anticipate when the results of that study will be out? I'm not gonna hold you to a specific date, just for the board, so we can kind of estimate.
So the study will be for the 2023 calendar year, and it'll be released in early 2024.
Right, kind of like how Rich's was earlier this year. Okay. Well, I mean, I think that will probably answer the pharmacy question, is that is a related thing, but also when you consider hopefully, multiple additional, factors as well. So Matt, if what you're saying is just some sort of link or form available through UDAP's website for patients to inform the department of what it is they're looking for, and then that information can be relayed to pharmacies, and then pharmacies can make decisions on which products they want to carry. If they want to run the risk of not having a particular product available that's in demand, that's a business risk they take. If they want to develop a better relationship or a new relationship with a processor to carry those products that patients are seeking.
Yep.
And it'd be a good way to aggregate it too. You at least know where it's coming from. And it doesn't then mandate anything on anyone, right? It says, hey, pharmacies, this is what patients are looking for. You then can make the decision to have a relationship with with a processor or not, to carry those products or to carry those specific products. And I think that seems like a way that isn't a central fill possible issue. My lawyer brain still tells me that's an issue. It's not processor home delivery, just in another form. And it also allows patients to get their point across, which is, I want this specific product. And then pharmacies can take the risk or not of carrying that. If Beehive in Brigham wants to carry products that Dragonfly in Salt Lake or Folsom Co in Davis County doesn't carry, well, then that's their option. But at the very least, pharmacies will be made aware through a formalized system, right? Through some sort of formal Google form or something of what's being requested. Is that essentially what you're positing? Okay. So I understood it.
Can I add something, JD?
Of course, Trevor, go ahead.
If you go to page 8 in the memo, it asks the question, what products should be eligible for requests? And I feel like we're kind of dancing around that topic, right? Because the initial idea of this proposal seemed to be there is a very small group of patients that have highly specific needs for niche products. And that's the group that this proposal was initially trying to aid, right? If we go back to that problem definition, some patients can't find their very specific product for their medical condition. And so this paragraph talks about how should the board try to define that? What's a specialty product? What's a product that should be eligible for these types of requests if there was an official system, right? If someone, you mentioned, demand for a product, right? If you have, 20 patients at a pharmacy saying, we want this, well, then, the pharmacy is most likely going to say, okay, we should probably start stocking this. But I heard stories of a patient saying, like, I'm the only person at my pharmacy that needs this. Or even processors saying, I know less than 50 patients in the entire state use this product, but I make it anyways because it's for them, not for me. So the question is, if you're a pharmacy that doesn't carry that product because it's not cost effective, you have one patient in the area that uses it, right? What's that patient's recourse? A comparable product may work, like you said, better or worse, depending on what happens with the patient. But I just want to add that context that the board might want to consider. What sort of products are we trying to get to patients here? Anything? Is anything eligible for a product request? Could I get 20 carts, 21 gram carts, the maximum legal amount on a product request? Or just that one-off tincture that, one person makes and I can't find anywhere else. So just want to add that.
I mean, if anybody wants to know what I have to say, I don't think that it's up to us to start deciding what somebody needs. and what would be a specialty product for them. Like what is, because first thing that always comes up is like, well, yeah, but they don't need flour, or they don't need high THC products. Absolutely, patients need flour, and absolutely patients need high THC products. And that, even though that can maybe appear to be rec for somebody, and a lot of times in these really sick patients, that's going to be the specialty product, not the 5 milligram gummy, right? And so I think that we're getting out of our scope when we're going to start deciding what is a specialty product and what is important enough or deemed by us to be able to be requested. If a patient needs it, let's just trust that they need it and let them order it.
And Des reflects the view of most folks that I talked to
Right.
and said, nobody should be deciding what's best for a patient. A patient should have the beginning and end of what they choose to purchase.
And if I could add really quick, there is always the medical provider chosen by the patient that can step in, and the pharmacist that can step in a particular transaction. But what is also possible is that a person who's used in the veteran market may have abused marijuana in the past and may choose to join the medical market, but continue to use recreationally. They get connected with a medical provider and a pharmacist that allow them to continue that abuse, potentially abuse in the medical market. It would allow for that to continue to happen. I mean, that's the reality of the current system. And that happens in an FDA-approved drug market sometimes, if we're being, honest. Rare exceptions. There's some providers that look the other way. Unfortunately, most don't, but unfortunately, that's caused some problems in the past. And so it's just important to realize, yes, there's those high need patients that do need those products, but yes, there are also those patients possible that will continue to use recreationally in the medical market, and they'll continue to submit a special request for a product that gets them high really quickly. And they coordinate with a medical provider that allows them to get that access.
Okay, any further board discussion? Otherwise, I want to move to public comment, so we can get to a vote here shortly. I have both Alyssa and Nareth listed for this one. If either one of you wants to make public comment, great. If not, we can take the folks online.
Mindy, want to say something?
Sure, just go ahead and speak, and then you can sign afterwards.
Hi, my name is Mindy Medeo. I'm a pharmacist at the pharmacy. I just wanted to add that a pharmacist needs to be able to always have that authority to not submit product. That's what we do in our medical system. So I don't want to ever be forced to dispense a particular product to a patient. That's all I have.
Thanks, Mindy.
Thank you.
I always lean towards the side of not adding more roles and responsibilities for our regulators that are already overburdened for plenty of regulations and compliance that they got to take care of. And I would also argue that the motion that was previously passed to allow targeted marketing and advertising for processors solves any of these problems, because as a processor, it would behoove me to make sure that on my website, I have an opportunity for a product request. And if I get said enough requests at a pharmacy that's not carrying our product, I would reach out and develop a relationship with that product or with that pharmacy. And at that point, they could choose to either purchase an allotment of 50 because I said there was 50 patients that asked for this, and I would purchase that. Now, if they only sell 5 of them, then there's a good chance I might not be doing business with that future processor in the future, right? From that perspective. So I think there's already a vehicle that allows this. Coming from a perspective of a pharmacy operator, I can probably count on one hand over the past 4 years where we've received any specific request, and if it was a request, it was a request for another branded product in another state that that person recognized that we can't offer anyways. So I really see it as a non-issue, to even make a motion to make any rules that isn't already being served through free market and good business practices among pharmacies. If there was a pharmacy in Brigham City and Mindy reached out to our pharmacy and said, hey, I got a patient there and we really want to get this product over here, you guys have it, would you guys be able to track? It would probably behoove us to have a good relationship with another pharmacy and say, yeah, I would actually be willing to help with that. So all those vehicles are already in place. Anybody can freely do any of these said measures already. So to vote on a motion to create something that can already be served for people that now has access to be able to have a website. I think that allows processors to collect this information and provide it without having to get regulators involved in that process.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah. We have anybody online? No hands. All right. We'll bring it back to the board for the discussion and for what it's worth. I agree with the point that Nareth is making. The system's already in place, you know, for this to be done. I don't think there's a need for a motion on this. I don't think there's a need to add another layer of the government to this. I don't think there's another need to revisit, you know, what we kind of already mentioned with processors at the last meeting. I think that, you know, if patients are making requests, pharmacies will develop the appropriate relationships that they need to, and those products will be made available. And if the pharmacies choose not to do that, that's a risk they're taking, and patients will go and take their dollars elsewhere and will vote with their dollars. That's my 2 cents, but happy to entertain any further discussion and or a motion. If there is no motion, happy to move on to our final agenda item other than adjourning. So does anybody have a motion they'd like to make? If not, we'll move on to the next agenda item.
Just a suggestion really quick, it might be good to make a motion to actually vote against if there's the agenda item of specialty product requests. Make a motion to be against that. It's an option. And then that's communicated to lawmakers.
Certainly happy to entertain that motion, you know, one in favor, one against. If there are no motions, then, you know, then we'll just move ahead and lawmakers can do with that issue what they, you know, what they feel.
Just for the record, I'll make a motion against it. Sounds like there's already a process in place. I make a motion against this and move on to.
Against specialty product requests. Okay, do we have
I'll
a second?
second it.
Okay, we have a second. Abby, will you take your roll call vote?
Was that Des that seconded?
Yes, Des seconded, yep.
So we're gonna vote against special product request, J.D. Lorenzen,
Yes.
Matthew Page,
Yes.
Desiree Hennessy,
Yes.
Misty Smith,
Yes.
Jimmy Higgs.
Yes.
Nanette Bresby,
Yes.
and Annalise Keene.
Yes.
All right, vote passes unanimously. We've been unanimous so far today.
Real quick, can I just, Trevor?
Yeah.
This issue number 2. Like this 2B and 2C, where did that language come in? It says issue additional pharmacy license with the condition of never having ownership connection with a Utah licensed cultivator.
So that was.
NC.
Yeah, can you pull that back up? Possibly, Abby?
I can address that. That just came internally as we were brainstorming.
Okay. I mean, can I?
Have different options.
Yeah, because there were a lot of different proposals for if we.
I mean, just to put on record, I mean, there's only one cultivator at this moment without a pharmacy license. So, I mean, you're essentially shutting out that cultivator.
Yeah, and to be clear, no decisions are being.
I mean, we'll
made,
just
no
put it out
votes
there.
being taken, No, nothing. So.
I just thought it's a terrible recommendation, so.
Right.
I mean, obviously I'm biased towards that because that's me.
Hey, but point of
So-
order, that is not on the agenda to be voted on today. We did not discuss it. We will discuss it at a future meeting,
Okay.
and per Brandon's directive, the department will study that, and I'm sure they will determine what the right language is to put in the RFP.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item number 8. Trevor, I am going to turn it over to you, but before I let you guys do that, I do want to say that the tax commission is not here today to do any kind of presentation. They have been discussing things internally with UCA. Alyssa will get to your public comment. Trevor does have some of the information, but essentially where it seems like this is all going to net out is what is the fiscal cost going to be? What's the fiscal note? And I say that, I guess, in parens or in quotes, because what it really is it's going to be the tax revenue that the state would not be realizing by giving operators this credit. The larger the credit, the less revenue they will receive from from taxes, right? From us as operators, right? Whether as a processor or cultivator, or most impacted by this is going to be pharmacies. So when you're looking at this, just keep that in mind, that even though Jason's not here from the tax commission, this comes from him. And this is being considered, by lawmakers. But where I really think it's going to net out is what can they swallow in terms of lost tax revenue? Now, I will make the argument, and I will always make this argument, this is tax revenue that the state never should have been receiving because we are a state legal business. We have sought to decouple, but because of the way Utah's tax laws are written, they follow the federal deductions. And because there are no deductions for cannabis under 280E, there's nothing for them to follow. So they would have to either rewrite Utah's tax code, which I think is probably highly unlikely just for cannabis businesses, or it will cost them a lot in terms of overhead to audit and administer, their own version of deductions just for the cannabis industry. So the credit is kind of a way to hopefully get as close to what the deductions we would get if 280E were done away with. And you can see here, there's kind of a range of percentages. Sorry, Trevor, to steal a little bit of your thunder, but I'll turn it over to you, just so no one's confused why Jason from the tax commission isn't here, or that this isn't a serious thing. This is something that will be a major focus, whether of the board or amongst folks at Capitol Hill, come this year, because this is some real tax savings, at least from the state perspective. So with that, Trevor, take it away, my friend.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I don't have too much more to add, other than a couple takeaways and maybe a brief explanation of this. In the tax commission's analysis, unsurprisingly, they found that pharmacies as retail businesses have a much larger proportion of 280E deductions, things like rent on that space, insurance, staff, keeping the lights on. There's a lot of expenses for pharmacies compared to production licenses. So what you see on the top, cultivators, processors, and pharmacies combined, that's just an industry-wide average accounting for each type of licensee. But the bottom one is specifically for pharmacies, given that they have many more disallowed deductions under 280E of the federal tax code. But with that, I can try my best to answer questions about them, because I am not a tax man. But I'll go ahead and turn it back.
Okay. We will take public comment, unless there's any further board discussion right now. I will take public comment because I know Alyssa will have, some insight on this, and she is our only person in the room that did sign up to comment on this item, and then we'll turn it to online, and then if not, we'll come back to the board.
Alyssa Snails, the Utah Cannabis Association. So I did meet with Senator Vickers and the drafting attorney on this one. What they plan to do is take the straight average, not accounting for NOL carry forwards at 1.8, all the way to the straight average accounting for NOL carry forwards, and just kind of see what the scope of the fiscal note could be. And then we're going to move forward after we make that determination. So
did they talk at all about a specific carve out for pharmacies, knowing that pharmacies are more disproportionately affected by
we
280E?
did talk about potentially putting that language in. And when I talked to Jason at the tax commission, he said that some businesses operate under one license, and so it'd be really difficult to parcel those pieces out. But we talked about potentially putting that language in for those companies that are under different entities. But even that, I think Jason worries that the lift administratively will be bigger. So, well, I'll keep having that conversation to see what we will do. Is that good?
Thanks, Alyssa.
Yeah.
Abby, do we have anybody online? Okay. Look, I don't claim to know taxes. I didn't practice tax law. I pay my taxes every year. That's about all I know, about taxes. For me as an operator, I would suggest that we recommend the largest possible credit that mirrors decoupling from 280E as possible. The more money that we can save as operators, the better it's gonna be, you know, down the line. 280E is a really awful thing, especially at the retail level. Look, rescheduling may happen at some point, right? But I would hate to wait on the feds to fix our tax issues when we could take, you know, at least the bull by the horns from a state perspective. And so my recommendation would be that we recommend to lawmakers that they enact the, I don't know how you say it, Trevor probably can say it better than me, but just the greatest percentage, the greatest tax percentage that the credit that they can, you know, that closely mirrors, you know, normal deductions, you know, without 280E. That's what I would say. I mean, the more money that can be saved, you know, the better. So that's how I see it, you know, from an operator's perspective. If someone has an argument as to why we should pay more taxes or not get as high of a credit, I'm happy to hear it, but it seems to me like the maximum credit possible is the recommendation. But happy to take more discussion or happy to take a motion.
So just really quick, so obviously they're scoping this problem kind of on their own. Are they scoping against average businesses, or are they just scoping it to understand what the minimal amount, just for the fiscal note? So they're just trying to understand what the fiscal note is, or I guess I might not make myself clear. Is that?
The fiscal note, all it is a loss in revenue.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
But as far as a policy decision, are they scoping it to kind of determine what like average businesses are deducting, like similar businesses, or are they just scoping to understand? the fiscal
I don't think so.
Yep, Alyssa.
They're just trying to.
What they're trying to do is they're trying to understand where the budget is, right? Like, because no matter what the ask is, it's going to be an ask.
Yeah.
Even though it's something they never should have taken, they still have to fit it into the budget. But what he's trying to do is figure out what percentage closely mirrors what the non-deductible expenses are, and then fit that into budget accordingly. So NOL carry forward, if you include, if you account for NOL carry forward, what that does is it helps compensate them in the past. So it helps ease the burden of years where they haven't been able to deduct. So when you look at that percentage of accounting for NOL carry forward, that's what that's doing. So the straight average without accounting for that is just saying basically that, hey, we start now, and from this point forward, this is what we're gonna do. The 2.7, which I think it says comes out to about 58%, that basically is saying, hey, they existed for 3 years or not, and they haven't been able to take these deductions up to this point, so this helps compensate for that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, well, be ready to entertain a motion if anyone has one. If not, I'm happy to make myself.
I wrote one down this time. I'll make a
All right,
motion.
let's hear it.
I make a motion that we approve the medical cannabis business tax credit at the highest rate possible in order to mirror a 280E decoupling.
Second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Will you read back the motion, Joyce? So we got it. I want to hear.
Yes.
Words one more time.
So,
We'll have Abby.
Abby, did you get it all?
Yeah, make sure it's all right.
Okay, so a motion to approve the medical cannabis business tax credit at the highest rate possible in order to mirror a 280E decoupling.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote when you're done typing.
JD Rickley,
Yes.
Matthew Page,
Yes.
Desiree Hennessy,
Yes.
Misty Smith,
Yes.
Jimmy Higgs.
Yes.
Nanette Bresney,
Yes.
Annalise Key.
Yes.
All right, Matt, motion passes unanimously. We don't have time today to talk about the meeting, next meeting's agenda. I would encourage all of you, I think we've started to really work our way through a lot of the regulatory and the kind of legislative issues. I really encourage all of you to message Trevor, message Abby, message me, Matt, about issues you'd like to see. For instance, Jimmy, you and I had talked about, some law enforcement issues you'd like to see addressed. Misty, I know you may have things from a research perspective, And obviously, Nanette, I'm sure you have things from a patient perspective. I really would like us to get to, in this new year, some of our issues, right? From a board perspective, from all of our members. So we will meet next week. Rich, I'll just ask you guys now. Brandon, Rich, would you guys be okay if we met Monday next week for our strategy session as opposed to Tuesday? I'll just be out of the office Tuesday through the end of the week. Okay, we got the thumbs up from Brandon, so you know it's all good to
I'll
go.
also be with JD.
All right, yes, we can be done with that. Okay, I will now take the most popular motion of the day.
Move to adjourn.
That motion
I
is
seconded.
not debatable and it passes unanimously. So, thanks, everyone. We're better. It's just good to see. Hey,